The story begins with our protagonist, Terus Sadu, hitting a goblin with his arrow along with other people. He cheered for himself, feeling proud of hitting the goblin. However, he then heard something beside him and saw a massive goblin growling angrily. The huge goblin furiously hit the ground and hurled a large stone toward him. He was shocked but managed to dodge it in time. He quickly adjusted his footing, aimed his arrow at the enormous goblin, and let it fly. Terus Sadu was an adventurer who had always dreamt of being in another world. Ever since he was a child, he had been obsessed with Isekai fantasies. In elementary school, he even started a magic club and became deeply engrossed in research. He took it a bit too far and even made the news, making him consider giving up his dream. However, he couldn't let go of his longing for another world. He attended a prestigious university known for its challenging academics and had the opportunity to join their century-old dark magic society. Now, he saw his hard work paying off and excitedly exclaimed that the next day was the big day. He had spent his entire life researching how to reach another world. He knew that people usually end up in another world by accident, like getting hit by an Isekai truck, but he was going there intentionally. He vowed to find great friends, complete quests, and enjoy the Isekai world he had always dreamt of. He gazed at the symbol he had drawn, realizing it meant everything to him. Then, he rummaged through his bag, pulled out a small knife, and made a tiny cut on his finger. He dripped his blood onto the symbol, thinking that with the society's century-long history, and the data gathered by his seniors, along with his calculations, this should be the final step. As his blood touched the center of the symbol, he raised his hands and waited for the next turn of events. However, when nothing happened, he anxiously tried to activate it by moving around the symbol. Unfortunately, it still didn't work. In his desperation, he noticed his stiff toy on the shelf, grabbed it, and placed it within the symbol. He apologized to it because it would be his sacrifice. He placed the teddy bear in the center and asked, "How about it?" He waited for a little while, but it still didn't react, which left him feeling disappointed. He wondered why there was still nothing happening. So, he stood up, looked at his teddy bear for a moment, turned around, and was about to leave the symbol. But then, a light suddenly emerged from the symbol, which shocked him. He couldn't believe it and wondered if this could be it. Excitedly, he shouted that he had finally managed to do it. However, at that moment, hands grabbed his neck, leaving him confused. The hands lifted him up, making it difficult for him to breathe, and he died in just a minute. Slowly, he opened his eyes and heard someone telling God that he seemed to have regained consciousness. He opened his eyes completely and saw a lady and an old man in front of him. The old man scolded him for doing something foolish, which made him worried and confused. The old man showed him a system and asked him to take a look. He was shocked to see a news report stating that in the Empire University Club room, a fourth-year student named Terus Sadu had been found dead. This made him wonder if it was him, and if he died, it made him realize that he was now a dead person. Still, he cheerfully asked them if the magic still worked. The old man frustratingly replied, yes, but told him that in his world, Earth, the gods never taught humans magic. So, it was surprising how he discovered it on his own while he was looking around. The old man told him that it was indeed impressive, but the magic circle he drew was not one for transportation, but instead, it was for reincarnation. He asked the old man what he meant. The old man explained that it was also an incomplete one since he didn't specify a destination or a purpose. He thought for a moment and then panically shouted that he messed up. After he calmed down, he told the old man that he needed to switch gears and excitedly asked if he was going to be reincarnated. He thought that since he had always been fascinated by other worlds, he couldn't let that chance slip away. If he was dead, he might as well go to another world. The old man replied that he would be reincarnated but explained to him that reincarnation was abolished a long time ago, which shocked him. The old man told him that it was only recently reinstated because of the new soul recycling law. He asked the old man what he meant by the soul recycling law. And the old man replied that, in short, using magic for reincarnation counted as suicide since he died in the process. He was shocked to hear it and asked if he really committed suicide. The old man replied that suicide was unforgivable, and the act of killing oneself counted against him in the reincarnation process. Besides, there were also those who would scheme and try to retain their previous life's abilities. So many ended up in terrible situations in their next lives. He asked the old man how terrible it was, and the old man replied that it was like being born but dying immediately, being born into misfortune, sold into slavery by cruel parents, or even reincarnating as beasts, demons, or insects. Those were situations where he was grateful for just being able to live. Hearing the old man's words, he turned white as a ghost in fear and shouted that there was no way he would become like that. Then he shakily told the old man that he was willing to be anything, but not a beast, demons, or insects. The old man sadly told him that there was not much he could do, but he still asked him about cheating skills. The old man asked the lady what cheating skills are, but the lady shrugged her shoulders, acting like she didn't know either. The old man asked him if he was talking about special skills and told him that they existed in the world he managed, but there was nothing too overpowered. He sweetly asked the old man if he could have that special skill when he reincarnates, and the old man replied that special skills are useful, but they take time and effort to activate. Plus, their activation conditions are often difficult to meet. He realized that it was a risk worth taking, and starting from a disadvantage means he'll need more than just regular skills, so he asked the old man if he could have the most special skill. The man laughed while telling him that he was still asking even after everything he had said, and since he was the first person to be reincarnated after the band, he might consider it, but he can't play favorites. Then the old man seriously asked him if he was still willing to do it. He clenched his fists and teeth, then confidently replied yes, knowing that he couldn't back down now. The old man told him that before he misunderstood, all the memories from his previous life would be erased, making him shocked, and he told the old man that it was new to him. The old man reminded him that he had told him he couldn't play favorites. So he asked the old man if even their conversation right now would be erased. The old man replied that everything would be erased before reincarnation, and he couldn't expect to cheat the system. He panicked hearing it and was about to tell the old man that maybe he'll just go with a regular skill, but then a system pop-up showed him that his death was unnatural. Then the system released a light that hit his head, his neck, his chest, and every part of his body. Then it directly flew down to the earth, then it flew down to the city, passed through the people on the street. People talking. A lady near the alley goes inside the alley where kids were beating someone, saying that it was boring because there is not a single valuable thing on him. Then the soul entered the beaten kid on the ground, making the kid wake up and see 3 kids walking away. But then his vision slowly blurred, and his eyes slowly closed. Then a light showed him that his special skill is unknown. The condition 1 is rebirth after death confirmed, and he acquired the memories of his previous life. He opened his eyes once again and remembered everything. He tried to stand up, knowing that it was close, and noticed that he was in a tough spot. But he knew he hadn't done anything extraordinary yet. He was glad he managed to reincarnate and regain his memories. Because of it, he couldn't die there. His name is Terus Sadu, and in his previous life, he was Terus Sadu. During a baptismal ceremony at age 6, it was revealed that he had a worthless skill called Garbled Text. Due to this, his alcoholic father decided to abandon him in a forest overrun with monsters. This was the reason he fled to a relatively large town named Saishi, which was a few days away from his village. Life was a struggle, and he barely got a meal every few days. He was in pain, wondering what he should do now. He had no money, was weak, and still a child. The adults didn't seem to pity him either. The obvious choice in that other world was unclear. He walked down the street, hiding his face from people. He stopped at a large building and saw that it was the Adventurers Guild. He opened the guild's door, but 4 members surrounded him, telling him to get lost because it was the Adventurers Guild. Ignoring them, he walked past, but someone grabbed his coat from behind and lifted him up, telling him not to ignore them. Then the lady called the man Mob and shouted that there should be no violence. Mob lowered him and placed him in front of the lady at the desk. The lady whispered to him that Mob intentionally spoke to him first so that other adventurers wouldn't bother him. He looked at Mob and was glad he had finally found a kind person in that world. Then he told the lady that he'd like to register, but she broke the news that there was a registration fee, shocking him and making him shout that it was news to him. But then he felt a sense of deja vu. He asked the lady how much the registration fee was, and she replied that it was 10 silver coins. This made him realize that he was in trouble, as 10 silver coins in this world were like 10,000 yen in his previous world. He was willing to register even if he had to borrow money, but his current situation was already precarious. Additionally, he had run away from the village, so he had no one to vouch for his identity. However, Mob threw a bag of coins at him, saying that he'd cover the cost for him. He looked at Mob in shock. Then, one of the adventurers told Mob that once the kid got the tag, he might run away. Mob told the adventurer that this was the point, and they should make a bet to see if the kid would work hard and repay the 10 silver coins he lent him. The adventurer thought it wasn't much of a bet and said that no one would bet on a kid. However, Mob insisted he was betting on the kid. So, the adventurer bet 15 silver coins that the kid would run, another bet 5 silver coins that the kid would slack off, and 20 that he'd drop dead before repaying. Toro looked at Mob and thought that despite Mob's tough exterior, he was definitely a good person. He thanked Mob, but Mob patted his head and told him not to get the wrong idea. The lady whispered to him that it was good for him. She explained that Mob was an orphan who became an adventurer after a difficult life, so Mob probably saw a bit of himself in Toro. They should proceed with his registration. The lady introduced herself as Nay and instructed Toro to touch the shining ball, which resembled the crystal ball from the baptism ceremony. When he touched it, a powerful light emanated, and a paper with writings appeared. Nay saw that his name was Toro and was shocked to see that his skill was the Garbled Text. Nay was silent while looking at it, and he asked her what the Garbled Text skill is. She replied that, for example, lancer and sewing, and by constantly practicing lancing techniques and clothing-related activities, one can improve their abilities and unlock unique skills. The voice of the world will guide them in acquiring these skills. He asked if she said the voice of the world, and she replied, yes, then told him that it was also referred to as the voice of the heavens and guides everyone in unlocking their abilities, to which he replied that he understood. He wondered if it could be the same voice he heard when he was on the brink of death and regained the memories of his past life. Nay excitedly told him that since he has the Garbled Text skill, he probably doesn't know in which field he should specialize, but trying various things should give him some clarity, and he should give his best effort. He replied that he would and thanked her so much. They told him to wait there, and he saw that she was heading to something that looked like a magical photocopier. They opened the lid to put the paper inside and closed it, making him shocked that it was indeed a magical photocopier. She grabbed something on the other side and gave the tag to him while telling him that it was his tag. proving that he was a member of the Adventurers Guild. He thanked her and looked at his tag, where he saw his name. Then she reminded him that he should wear it around his neck, so he did, and she excitedly told him to let her explain about the Adventurers Guild. She explained to him that it operates on a ranking system, starting with G rank for beginners, and the advancements are G-, G, G+, F-, and so on, making him realize that it seems like a long journey for him to climb up those ranks. She also told him that once he reached B rank and above, he was considered elite, and the highest rank was S+. But he should beware because any crimes he committed would be recorded on his tag, and once he committed a crime, he would be expelled from the guild on the spot. Also, he would be handed over to the guards, regardless of the severity of the offense. She told him that there are many rough adventurers out there, but most of them follow the rules and complete their quests, so he shouldn't worry, making him think that they seem rough, but they are actually decent folks. He told Nay that he'd like to start a quest soon. She told him to calm down because it was lunchtime, and as a celebration for him becoming an adventurer, lunch was on her, making him excited, and thanked her. A minute later, in a tavern, Nay served him food. He saw ham-stuffed mushroom soup and Dutch oven bread, making him drool and tearful with hunger. He dipped the bread into the soup and immediately put it in his mouth. His tears flowed down his cheeks because it tasted so good. Nay looked at him with a smile and told him that she had been curious. Then she asked if he came from a well-off family because he was polite and had good table manners. But she added that he didn't have to answer if it was a sensitive topic. He replied that his family was just a household of poor farmers, and his mother had passed away shortly after he was born. At 6 years old, he ran away from home because they had planned to abandon him in the forest. They asked if it was because they wanted to reduce the number of mouths to feed, and he replied that it was something like that. He then told her that they would often beat and kick him, so he wasn't attached to them at all. He looked sadly at the bull, remembering that the journey to that city was tough. A huge bull monster attacked him, but then something attacked the bull, and he saw another monster attacking it. This made him jump in shock and fear. He managed to reach the city of Saishi, but it wasn't kind to the weak like him. They would always fight for the leftovers they managed to find, and barely surviving was his daily routine. But thanks to that meal, he drank the leftover soup in the bowl, knowing that he could live for a few more days thanks to it, while Nay looked at him with a smile. Later, he called Nay, who was busy at the desk, and told her that he had completed the gutter cleaning quest while he's covered in dirt. She informed him that there was a well in the back, so he should freshen up. She added that the spare clothes might be a bit big, but he could still wear them. He thanked her profusely and walked into the back of the guild, where he saw the well. He put down the bucket to get the water. Just as he was about to lift the bucket up, someone shouted, saying he smells bad, making him let go of the bucket full of water. He looked up and saw a man at his side. He was angry hearing it, and he told the man that he smelled too. The man became angry upon hearing this and dared him to say it again. Then, the man pushed him away while commenting that he looked and smelled as if he hadn't taken a bath in a long time. Even the rags he was wearing had changed color due to the dirt. The man told him he had no choice and would heat up some water. He shouted, "Go take a bath." He was still angry for a moment, but then he realized that the bearded man was kind. The man poured water into a large bucket and wondered how he would heat it up. The man chanted, and fire come out from his hand. Then, the man put his hand inside the bucket of water, which made him wonder if it was magic. The water began to boil, amazing him. The man slapped his head and told him to hurry up and get in. He tested the water with his finger, excited that it was his first bath in a long time. If he counted his previous life, it had been 8 years. Then, the man lifted him up and placed him in the large bucket. The man quickly washed his head and ordered him to get his hands moving. To which he replied, yes. Minutes later, he finished showering and felt refreshed. A voice informed him that his special skill had activated. A condition from scrubbing off years of accumulated grime had been met, confirming the acquisition of the purification spell. The man asked him what was wrong, and he explained that he had heard the voice of the world just now and seemed to have learned purification. The man told him that the condition for him to learn the purification spell must have been the bath and asked if it varied from person to person. The man replied that it did, and the same skill could be acquired through different means. He also mentioned that innate talents played a role in it. One way to learn fire-based spells would be to continuously interact with fire, and the key to learning a skill is trying out different approaches. Still, no one would have thought that he'd learn a rare spell under such a condition. He was shocked to hear that it was a rare spell, and the old man gave him a shirt to wear. He thanked the man profusely. The man told him that there was no need to thank him and that he'd take a bath himself, so he should leave. Later, he was busy looking at the quest board when Nay called him and told him that their guild's branch chief wanted to have a word with him. He wondered what such an esteemed person could possibly want from him. A minute later, he knocked on the door and asked if he could come in. To which the person from inside replied, "Go ahead." He entered and was shocked to see the bearded man. They told him to mind his manners because it was their branch chief, Leo, which made him even more shocked. He bowed down while telling Leo that he wanted to thank him for earlier, and Leo told him that it was fine, so he should take a seat. Leo mentioned that he had heard from Nay that he had no money and no place to stay, to which he replied, yes. Leo then offered him a deal. The guild had a vacant room with a bed, and he was free to use it in the meantime. But in exchange, he had to help with the cleaning and assist Nay and the rest of the guild staff. Of course, he would be paid for his work. He excitedly asked Leo if he was sure, and Leo replied that Nay had been quite adamant about it, so it was the least he could do. Leo mentioned that he might have borrowed from Mo, but he was still an adventurer through and through. Then Leo advised him not to run away without settling his debt, as it would stain both his record and the Adventurers Guild's trust. He better behave with the honor expected of an adventurer, to which he replied, yes. Leo also noticed that he seemed to have hurt his head, so he suggested getting that wound treated in the medical room with their magic and told him that he was dismissed. He exited the room while excitedly thanking Leo, and Leo told Nay that, just like she and Mo mentioned, there was still a spark in Toro's eyes. Leo also mentioned that while the Garbled Text skill has its drawbacks, it should at least get Toro through day-to-day life. On the other hand, in the spare room, he was amazed to see the place. He straightaway jumped onto the bed while excitedly shouting that he finally had his own bed again. Then he jumped in happiness and told himself that they should do their best tomorrow. But the next day, he was panicking because he overslept, so he immediately got up and apologized to Nay for oversleeping. Nay just greeted him with a good morning and told him to take it easy because knowing how yesterday was for him, she chose to let him sleep in. He waved goodbye to her while telling her that he was off to work. She told him that they were counting on him. Then he started to clean the walls and floor. He noticed that they seemed busy with something. He asked them if there was anything he could do to help. One of them replied that there was a lot, but he didn't think he knew how to read. He told them that he could read and write just fine and that he also knows arithmetic, so he should be able to handle it if it's something like simple document filing, making him glad for his past life's memories. The adventurers were shocked to hear his words. Someone grabbed his shoulder and asked him if he could really read, write, and do arithmetic. He replied yes, and Nay told him to help them. The adventurers couldn't believe it. One of them said that the only thing she knows how to read and write is her name. The other said that he can't even write. The other said that he can count up to 10, but his friend told the adventurer that he's just adding and subtracting using his hands. After collecting everything, he walked while holding the papers. But then he stopped walking and remembered that he hadn't done any quests today, which means his earnings are 0, making Nay panic and reminding him about the papers. A few days later, he noticed that his days had been busy ever since he started staying at the guild. Helping with guild work day and night meant he didn't have time to relax. He completed beginner escorting quests during the day and even became accustomed to tiring physical labor. In just over half a month, he was able to repay his debt to Mobe. He called Mobe, who was at the desk, and thanked him for lending him money. Mobe told him not to mention it and shouted that those who bet on Toro falling should pay up because Toro had returned the money. The adventurers who bet were shocked to hear this, and Mobe angrily asked them what that was supposed to mean. After collecting the bets, Mobe told him that he made that much money because of him, so he gave him his share. This made him teary-eyed because Mobe is so kind. Then May gave him today's payday and asked him why he doesn't use that money for his needs. He explained that he had ranked up from G- to G, so he might as well, knowing that once he reached F-, he'd be able to do herb gathering quests in the forest or defeat one-horned hares and the like. So he decided that he was going shopping today. He went outside of the guild, thinking that shopping back in his world wasn't something he looked forward to, but shopping in his long-admired other world is super fun. Later, he saw the shop and thought it must be the second-hand shop Nay told him about. He remembered Nay telling him to make sure to size up because children grow fast, so he thought he would buy oversized clothes and a cape to shelter himself from the rain. After that, his next stop was the weaponry shop. He arrived at the shop and realized Nay sure had good connections because she even knew of a shop like that. Then he remembered that according to Nay, the shop is run by dwarves, but he had never seen a dwarf before. He thought it was rare to see sub-races aside from humans in that town, but he had met beast folk at the Adventurers Guild, so he wondered how his first encounter with dwarves would go. Then he entered the shop and called for the owner. Then he was amazed to see the equipment and wondered where the shopkeeper was. Someone from behind told him to look at their wares while he waited a bit, but after a few minutes, no one came. So, he decided to look behind, thinking that the shopkeeper said a bit, but the shopkeeper sure was taking his time and wondering if the shopkeeper is still busy. The shopkeeper, who was busy doing something, looked back and saw him, which made him remember that there was a customer. The old man asked him if he was a kid, and he replied yes. The old man asked him if he was sent there by his parents, and he replied no. Then he asked the old man if he wasn't going to temper it while pointing at the sword. But the old man just asked him back what it was. He replied that he was not that knowledgeable about it either, but it's when he strikes while the iron is still hot and then pours water over it to temper it. Also, apparently, it is how he hardened the iron. The old man told him that it was the first time he had heard of it, but it did sound pretty logical and asked him wouldn't it bend the iron. But then the old man thinks that he could always just regulate the force he used. Then the old man looked at the sword behind him in sweat and pointed to somewhere while telling that daggers that suit his needs are on the shelf over there, so he should go pick one. He was giving him one on the house as thanks for telling him about tempering. He was amazed to hear it and asked the old man if he was sure, but he was shocked to see that the old man was working again and realized that the old man was itching to put it to use right away. So, he just grabbed one of the daggers while telling the old man that he'll take him up on his kind offer. After he grabbed it, he positioned himself, swung his dagger around, and asked the old man what he thought. But the old man didn't answer because he was busy working, making him wonder if the old man was just going to ignore him. He thanked the old man for the dagger and said that he'll be taking his leave, to which the old man replied sure, making him think that it was supposed to be today's highlights, but it went differently from how he expected. Later, after Nay saw his things, she told him that at his age, it was totally acceptable to choose something showy. He told her that they were much more comfortable than the clothes he had been wearing, so he told himself to just shake it off. She told him that his raincoat wasn't half bad, and even if he got it appraised, the material was somewhat defective, but it was cheap, so he was fine. He asks what is appraised, knowing that in other words, he was bound to hear in a different world. She explained to him that it was one of her skills and that she could use it on objects. He asks her if she can't appraise people, and she replies that only a section of her ability has been unlocked so far, so she can't. But it's still plenty useful on objects, and she can use it to appraise loot he gets from quests, and it saves her from getting duped by merchants. But it's become a more versatile ability since then. He asked her what she had to do to be able to use it on people, and she replied that she had to meet the requirements, and the skills rank was a factor too. Then she gave him an example that if he has an S appraisal rank, he can appraise anything once he clears the necessary conditions, but if it's G rank, he can never appraise people, no matter how much he tries to fulfill the criteria. Also, she hears he can even identify personal talents with an S appraisal rank, and he told her that in that case, it might help him find out what his Garbled Text skill really was, to which she replied that it might be possible. He told her that he recently learned the purifying skill but asked her if Garbled Text can be learned similarly by clearing the conditions and all. She was shocked to hear that he had learned to purify and told him that it was a rare spell learned by healers. Then she told him that perhaps his Garbled Text skill is a healing one, and he asked her if it was how it works. She replied that he had one skill with Garbled Text, so he must be a healer if he were able to learn to purify. But then she remembered something and asked him if he also learned the spell Cleanse, but he replied no, making her shocked, and he panicked, asking her if it was bad. She explained to him that purifying is a high-ranking skill learned by healers, but in order to learn it, he must first know the low-ranking skill, Cleanse, and the middle-ranking skill, Purge, before he acquires the high-ranking skill, Purify. Still, in his case, he learned to purify right away, so it doesn't make him a healer. Then she thinks of a skill that lets him learn to purify instantly, and she thinks seriously for a moment while he was excitedly waiting for her answer. But she apologizes to him because she has never heard of one like it, making him shocked. So, the mystery of Toro's Garbled Text skill only deepens. The next day, he was busy training his dagger outside when Nay called him and told him to come there for a moment. He stopped and asked her what it was. She told him that he had done a great job at work today and gave him his pay, making him happy and glad because he had been meaning to buy all sorts of things. But he knew that he couldn't buy them all at once, so he needed to list them in order of priority. Mob asked him what he was up to because he looked like he was having fun, but he just happily walked away, making Mob think that something was not right and shouted at him. But then he accidentally bumped into someone on the way, and he apologized to Leo. Leo asked him if he was okay, and he excitedly replied that he got his second pay of the day today, making Mob laugh. Leo happily told him that seeing how pumped he was, he should take today off, and he happily thanked Leo. Then he waved them goodbye because he was heading out. Mob and Leo smiled as they looked at him. A minute later, he stopped walking and remembered that he needed to say thanks to Angus, who was the dwarf shopkeeper. While he was heading to the shop, he saw people outside and proceeded to walk toward Angus's shop. He knocked on the door and walked inside, wondering if Angus was not inside his shop. Then he walked to the back door, thinking that he was not there as a customer today, and called Angus to ask where he was. Angus asked who was there and if he was the boy from last time. He replied that he wanted to thank him for giving him one of his daggers. But then Angus lifted him up while telling him that it could wait, and tempering the iron made it harder but also more brittle. Then he asked him what should he do. He told Angus to calm down because he was hurting him. Angus panicked and released him, apologizing to him. Then he told him that he had been experimenting with all sorts of things since then, and they had become harder but also more brittle, making him shout in his head that there was no point in doing it. He told Angus that a way to strengthen tempered metal is by annealing, and tempering and annealing go hand in hand. Then he told Angus that when he struck the iron at a temperature lower than when he tempered it, it apparently became more durable and less prone to breaking. During the tempering process, he should apply a special clay called Yakibatsuchai to the blade, which makes it cool faster and get harder. Angus replied that he understood. Then he told Angus that if he did all of it, the weapons should come out nicely. Angus got excited and thanked him. Then he told him that he thought he saw a glimmer of light and he should allow him to call him Master. But he told Angus that Master is too much because he simply shared with him what he knew. Suddenly, the voice told him that his special skill activation, the condition of being adept at recognizing what experts truly revere, was confirmed. As a result, he had obtained the Eyes of Truth, which made him confused and wonder if it was an appraisal ability. Angus told him that he'd make something good using the information he gave him and he should come to see him in a month, to which he bowed to Angus and thanked him. Then he told Angus that he'd be taking his leave. A minute later, he walked on the street and looked at different stores around him. He excitedly planned to test his skill. Then he used the Eyes of Truth and was amazed to see the fruits, things, and armor qualities and conditions. But he noticed that he can't use it on people, although he knows that his new ability is sure handy. He grabbed one of the oranges and wondered if it is how everyday things look to Ned. He'll ignore that it would have gotten him duped if it weren't for that ability and only buy good ones. The lady who was selling the potion offered him another, but he took the one he chose. Then the shopkeeper of leather asked him for his decision, and he replied that he was buying that belt. The bookkeeper couldn't believe that he can read, but he knew that it was a bargain, so he'd regret not purchasing those. Later, people looked at him because they thought he had a lot of things on him, but he just carried the box full of things with a fragile warning and tried to steady himself while carrying everything. He was glad to buy everything he wanted but was sad that he had no money left. It's been 2 months since he became an adventurer, and most adventurers see him as the guild's go-to errand runner and handyman, often tasked with simple or punitive missions meant for novices or rule breakers. Few truly regard him as a genuine adventurer, and his rank remains at G+. If promoted to F-, he'd be assigned quests to the city walls, but the guild assessed his physical prowess as insufficient. One man called him to come to the courtyard, and there the adventurers were practicing. The guild martial arts instructor, Daz, told him that he had gotten leaner since the last time he saw him and he may participate in their training. He excitedly looked at his training sword and was worried they hated him since he couldn't train for 2 months. But then Daz told him to show him his potential. Suddenly, Daz attacked him, but he jumped in time to avoid it, making Daz tell him that he had good reflexes. Then he forcefully stopped his feet to go to his position, raised his sword up, held it tightly, and swung it to attack back. But Daz easily blocked it and told him that he was wasting too much movement swinging his sword. Then Daz swung his wooden sword around while telling him to brace himself and attack him, which hit his cheek. Then he fell to the ground while Daz told him that he let his guard down. Then Daz gave his hand to help him and told him that he had potential. Daz also told him that if he understood the basics of battle, he'd become strong. But first, they needed to do something about his stance, to which he replied yes. He only got busier from there because he cleaned up the guild, he ran errands for quests, and had martial arts training. So at the end of the day, he would lay on his bed, feeling tired. He thought it was great and all, but there has got to be a faster method. He thought he'd tidy up and hit the sack for now. Then he used his purify to purify himself. But then he realized something, and if maybe he can clean the guild with purify. How potent is his magic, to begin with? So he planned to give his room a go for starters. He put his hand on the floor and used his purify to clean his room. Then a minute later, every corner in his room was shining in cleanliness. He noticed that the walls were originally white and that he still had magic in the tank. So he planned to stretch it further and tried to purify the entire guild. After that, he peeked and didn't hear something, so he turned around to leave, knowing that he should walk around to see if anything changed. But when he was about to walk, he felt pain in his body and slammed to the ground hard. Someone ran toward his room in a panic, and Leo asked him if he had done it. But he just tiredly laughed. A few moments ago, Leo, Nay, and the adventurers were shocked to see the guild being purified, and panicky asked what it was. He tiredly apologized to Leo and told him that it was probably him, making Leo panic and ask if he was okay. Leo told him that he must have run out of mana and called him a fool, telling him not to use purify on the smallest of things. Normally, he'd use it against the undead or to lift curses off items. Leo picked him up and told him to use cleanse for regular cleaning. Then Leo put him down on the bed and advised him to get some rest for the day, but he told Leo that he was still not done. Still, Leo told him that he'd regain mana once he sleeps. The next morning, using Purify yesterday freed up his schedule, so instead of cleaning, he had more time to practice his swordsmanship. However, the training was mostly just repetitive basic drills. Daz told them to train until it becomes second nature, and the mock battle begins once they have that down. He was notably younger and smaller than the other trainees, and some of them even had their own unique, self-taught sword styles. His ascent into the world of adventurers was clearly a rarity. He remembers Nay telling him that there is a reason they don't just hand out higher ranks to everybody because they need to ensure the quality of their adventurers. After all, it was a profession full of risks, so they can't have just anyone diving into it without being serious. He lifted his wooden sword up and swung it down, thinking that he was lucky. Later, behind Angus's workshop, he called Angus, and Angus excitedly told him that he arrived there. Then Angus slapped his back happily while telling him that he managed to forge blades like never before because of him, so he owes him one. Angus lifted a beautiful sword while proudly telling him that he forged its short blade for him and asked him if he will take it. He takes the sword and thanks Angus so much, but Angus tells him not to because he should consider it a gift from him, just to say thanks. He activated his eyes of truth and saw that its price is 15G, knowing that a single gold coin is approximately 10,000 yen. He was shocked to realize that the sword is worth 150,000 yen. Angus asked him what he meant by 150k yen, and he replied that it is nothing, then asked Angus if perhaps he adds something to it. Angus couldn't believe that he could tell and told him that every now and then, his ability, called throw in a bonus. He made a sword a while back and accidentally gave it a +1 in skill, so people went nuts over it. Hearing it, he was shocked and shaking as he looked at the sword. Then he noticed that its agility is +5, and its skills are +2. He thinks people already went crazy over a +1 enhancement, so he wonders what more if they see his sword that was +2. 6 months later, he thinks that it has been half a year since he regained the memories of his past life. The memories from his past life were mostly in the form of acquired knowledge, but their benefits can't be overlooked. It's like those Isekai fantasy stories where the characters use their advanced knowledge to dominate another world. But after some research, he has realized that his knowledge can be a double-edged sword. He looked at the newspaper and fearfully read that a vagabond died from a monster attack. Then he heard someone asking his friend if that person was the rumored vagabond who appeared at the commercial guild's office for registration. His friend replied that it wasn't very smart of him to register without any backing. He remembered that the vagabond wanted to apply for a patent, apparently, but his idea was claimed under a noble's name. The very next day, his body was found in the forest just outside of town. He knows that applying advanced technology there may not go as easily as he thought it would. He noticed one of the participants swinging too much, which is risky. When that participant's opponent saw the opening, he put his wooden sword near the participant's neck. Toro knows that it was a plain attack but a practical one, saying it. He came up with an idea and excitedly shouted that he'll go with something that looks plain but is hard to imitate practically. Later, with that in mind, he baked some of his favorite bread from his past life. He knew that in that world, hygiene practices were extremely unacceptable because they didn't even practice washing their hands. So, it was challenging just to bake some bread using yeast. But he thinks if his plan succeeds, he'll be able to make some nice, fluffy bread and eat it. Also, he knows that with purification, he'll eliminate only the microorganisms, and he successfully made a yeast. While he was busy in the kitchen, Nay saw him and wondered what he was doing. Then she asked him what he was planning to do with that fruit soaked in sugar water, and he replied that he was going to make bread with it. Nay asked him if he really meant bread, not dessert, and he confidently replied yes. Then he explained to her that he could use that to make soft, white bread from flour, bread that she had never seen before. She excitedly asked him if it was the luxury white bread the rich eat and told him that she wanted to do it too. He told her that first, they should mix the yeast with the dough, to which Nay replied she understood. Then he told her that second, they should knead the dough until it becomes smooth. Third, let it sit for about an hour to rise, and next, they will bake the raised dough, but there is no oven, so they'll use a pan to cook the dough. After heating it for a few minutes, it was done. He told her that it was not so fluffy since it was cooked in a pan. But it was fine. She told him that it had that faint fruity smell, and outside the kitchen, Leo and the others smelled the bread too. Leon rushed inside the kitchen and asked them if they made bread, to which he replied yes. Then he told Leo that it was soft and fluffy white bread. Leo grabbed one of the bread and wondered what kind of bread it is because it is crusty on the outside, yet so soft on the inside. Leo and Nay ate the bread and both liked its taste. Nay told him that he was incredible because not only he could read, write, and do calculations, but he could also bake bread. He smiled awkwardly, knowing that he was not originally from that world, so he knew many things. The building next to the Adventurers Guild serves as a canteen pub, which is also managed by the guild, and it's usually a hangout spot for adventurers and people alike. When they added the white bread, meat, and vegetable sandwich to the menu, it became a hit within a week. Also, it even increased the number of ordinary customers, and it was Toro's creation, but they made it the Sacy Guild branch's exclusive specialty. Toro could eat good food and receive shelter from the guild, so it was a win-win situation for him. He was busy thinking that he liked the bread, but he also liked rice just as much. But it looked like rice wasn't a staple food in that world because they treat rice as a typical weed they use to feed their livestock, making him cryingly shout that they have gotta be kidding him. But then he thinks that it was his duty as a former Japanese to spread the wonders of rice, but he knows that it was really not his duty. But he still wants to eat it, so he tried talking to Leo about it. But Leo replied that he never heard of it, so he decided to serve Leo bread made with rice flour. Leo looked at the rice flour bread and was about to grab one while telling him that he didn't know about it. Leo bit it and was shocked. Leo told him that it had a different texture compared to the wheat bread and it was chewier, and it's pretty tasty. Then Leo pulled the rice flour bread in half and noticed that it was sticking to each other. Leo agreed and told him that they'd start selling rice bread, making him excitedly shout yes. A few days later, he noticed that the rice flour bread seemed quite popular, making him proudly say it was awesome and knows that he should think about a main course made from rice. He wonders if maybe an easy-to-eat bowl. Then he begins to cook the rice, and since they don't use chopsticks there, he'll make it spoon-friendly by dicing the monster meat. Then saute it with some seasonings. After it is cooked, put the meat on top of the rice and top it off with the sauce made from the meat juices. Then he successfully made his easy-to-eat bowl dish. Thus, another hit menu item was created, and the people were amazed, wondering how livestock feed tasted that amazing. Then one day, he put the sauce in the bowl and finished the Chaizuk-style dish. He grabbed one spoon to eat and was about to put it in his mouth when the voice told him that his skill activation, the conditioned food evangelist, was completed, so he had acquired plant knowledge, making him wonder what the heck it was and think that a useless ability was bound to show up one way or the other. Once again, he heard the voice that he had acquired plant knowledge, but he didn't feel anything inside him, making him wonder why he didn't feel any changes even though he gained an ability. So, he planned to look at the garden plants, but when he was in the garden, he noticed that nothing was happening, and his brain wasn't showing anything. He guessed maybe if he appraised them, he could get a result. Then it showed him that weed is common grass that can be found growing anywhere, making him shocked because he knows that they are weeds, but the truth was they are weed. He excitedly says that he takes his words back because it might be a useful ability. Later, in the guild hall, adventurers were talking around, and he was holding a G-rank cat search quest in progress while telling Nay that Teja Gramps is out at the moment and asking if he can leave Tabby, who is the cat, there with her. She replied, of course, and just to make sure to mark it in the ledger that he was safe now because with it, that quest is officially complete. He gave Tabby to Nay while telling it to stay put, and Nay told him that she felt like Tabby spent more time at the guild than at home. Then she asks him if he can lend her his adventurer tag before. He takes off his tag while asking her why and gives it to her. She told him that he'd see in a moment while playing with Tabby. She put the lock on Tabby's neck while telling it to wait there and went to the magic printer while telling Toro that he should wait there too. Then she clicked the magic printer open and put Toro's tag inside of it. Then the magic printer proceeded to work. After it, she grabbed the new tag and congratulated Toro on his promotion to F rank. He saw his tag with his name that increased to F rank minus and excitedly thanked Nei for it. She asks him how about he take on an F rank quest since he was there, and he replies that he will and he'll get ready. Then he speedily ran away, making Nei notice that Toro totally forgot about the ledger. He opened his room door, put on his cap, grabbed his sword, and put on his gear immediately. Then he speedily grabbed the quest with a picture of the herbs and put it on the desk while excitedly telling Nei that he'll take on that quest, making Nei shocked, noticing that it was an herb gathering quest, and tells him that she was expecting him to go for a hunting quest, especially since he got that sword from Angus. He told her that it was true, but he also had other things that he'd like to try out. Later, he thought he had arrived at the quest place and something made him believe it was the right spot. So, he used his plant appraisal skill. He spotted the weed, a healing grass used for treating minor injuries, and the straw mushroom, an ingredient for making soup. This excitedly confirmed his suspicions. He placed down his large basket, grabbed the healer grass, and pulled it out. With his ability, he could easily spot and gather herbs, making it efficient. He then started picking the healer grass, poisu grass for detoxifying, and other grasses until his basket was full. He couldn't believe he gathered that much in just 2 hours, but he worriedly realized he might have ventured too deep into the forest. Putting the basket on his back, he decided to retrace his steps. However, he heard something moving in the bushes. He peeked to see what it was, but suddenly, a goblin emerged from the bush. He immediately crouched down to hide, wondering why it was there. He looked at his sword, thinking that if it was just one goblin, he might have a chance if he surprised it. In typical fantasy scenarios, he was supposed to defeat it there. Besides, he also wanted to test out that sword. However, for some reason, he couldn't stop shaking. Despite this, he knew he had to act, so he quickly stood up to surprise attack it. Unfortunately, he stepped on a branch, making a loud noise that filled him with horror. The goblin heard it and swung its axe towards his hiding spot to attack him. Fortunately, he managed to block it using his sword and tried to keep it from getting closer to him, albeit trembling. Then, the goblin forcefully threw his sword away. He immediately jumped to retrieve his sword from the ground while the goblin chased after him with its axe. When the goblin swung its axe toward him, he fell in time to avoid it and slipped behind it while gripping his sword. However, as he was about to draw his sword from its sheath, he trembled in fear when he saw the goblin behind him and cried out as the goblin swung its axe toward him. He waited nervously for the goblin's attack, but then his sword suddenly lit up and emitted a powerful light, causing the goblin to miss. The system displayed a +5 agility notification, leaving him wondering what was happening. When he lifted his feet, he found himself moving swiftly, leaving the goblin shocked and fearful as he ran away like the wind, thus escaping safely. Afterward, he continued his F-rank herb gathering quest and dedicated his free time to sword training. He even began experimenting with potion making, using books as his guides. He also started learning blacksmithing from Angus and, recently, had been practicing archery. The reason for his diverse pursuits was his unique skill, Garbled Text, which had very specific activation conditions. Upon reincarnation, he regained memories from his past life. After purifying himself of 2 years' worth of impurities, he learned the skill of purification. Normally, accumulating so much impurity in just 2 years was unusual, and few people had the chance to bathe frequently. He obtained the Eyes of Truth through his adeptness at recognizing what experts held in high regard, something typically requiring years of knowledge, wisdom, and charisma. Thanks to his past life's knowledge, he became an expert in food and gained extensive knowledge about plants. Looking back, he realized that such extraordinary feats couldn't be achieved overnight in a normal life. His persistent nature drove him to try everything, hoping to meet the conditions to acquire more skills. Mauve was astonished when an arrow accidentally hit his cape. Mauve examined it closely and nervously called out to him. He quickly apologized but was then approached by someone who patted his shoulder. Daz advised him to take it easy. He knew he had dedicated his youth to getting transferred to another world, but it had turned out to be a reincarnation. Later, inside the guild where adventurers chatted busily, he sighed to himself, reflecting on how he had tried various things for about 1.5 years but hadn't truly mastered anything. He remembered introducing new items at the relaxing inn, which became instant hits, and teaching Angus how to craft a new weapon called a katana. He successfully hunted down a one-horned rabbit, marking his first monster hunt. He remembered that God had warned him it wouldn't be easy, and now he realized God wasn't wrong. He understood that he had gained valuable experience from all his experiments. He discovered that he could handle various tasks with dexterity, a rarity in a world filled with skills. Usually, those without skills were considered talentless, and mastering something without innate ability was nearly impossible. He wondered if his garbled text might have something to do with it. He slapped the table in frustration, suspecting he might be overthinking, and decided to head out for a herb gathering quest. Today, he planned to venture into the northeastern forest. He knew that if he kept going to the same woods, he'd deplete all the herbs. He remembered that the deeper he went into any forest, the rarer the herbs he found. But the deeper he went, the more he sensed the presence of monsters. They were mostly goblins, but in some areas, he might even encounter an orc or two. He considered wrapping up today's quest quickly, but then he spotted a pepper bells plant. He carefully collected it and placed it inside his basket. Then, he found another herb and excitedly exclaimed, "Jackpot!" because he had found a mana flower. He also noticed some black grass, making him feel lucky. As he walked, he heard rustling in the bushes. He looked back, wondering if it was a rabbit or a goblin. Then he heard growling, causing him to sweat with fear. He immediately crouched down when he saw a goblin emerge from the bush while holding a rat. He grasped his sword and noticed it was indeed a goblin. With a trembling hand, he comes out of the bush while carefully drawing his sword from its sheath. However, the goblin, which had been about to eat the rat, simply looked at him, and he stared back at it. Suddenly, he sprinted away at full speed, leaving the goblin and the rat bewildered. While he was running away, a voice informed him that his special skill activation condition, the strong man who keeps running away from goblins, was confirmed. He couldn't believe it. The voice then revealed that he had acquired presence detection and a stealth cloak. He continued to run away while shouting incredulously, asking if they were seriously giving him skills now. Later, he safely returned to their guild house and saw many adventurers walking around. Then he activated his new stealth cloak skill and slowly faded away. He looked at his hand, wondering how good it was, and waved his hand to a man named Whisker to check if Whisker could see him. Then he said hello to a lady named Hour to confirm it. He smiled, wondering if he had succeeded, without noticing a hand approaching him from behind. The hand hit him on the head while shouting his name. He looked up to see who it was and saw an angry Leo telling him to choose the right place to use it. He awkwardly laughed in response, thinking that it seemed like some people could still see him. A moment later, he was in the forest picking herbs when he felt something coming toward him, causing him to look up and ask if there were monsters around. He hid behind a nearby tree and was relieved to see that it was just a horned rabbit. He thought he should kill it since horned rabbit meat is edible, the skin can be sold, and the horn can be used for medicine. He activated his stealth cloak and appeared behind the horned rabbit. Then he stabbed it, causing it to fall to the ground dead. He bent down to grab it, thinking that the stealth cloak's effect surely had its merits. Suddenly, he felt something approaching again, so he immediately hid behind the bush and wondered if it was another monster. He swung his sword at the man, making the man shout for him to wait and ask if it was Sadu. He realized that the man was one of their guild members, Yelhai, and Yelhai told him to contact the guild. Then Yelhai explained to him that their team was currently fighting a group of goblins and needed backup because there were about 80 goblins. He replied that he understood and ran away swiftly, telling Yelhai to hang in there until the reinforcements arrived, to which Yelhai replied that they were counting on him. Minutes later, he forcefully opened the guild door and immediately told Leo that Five Arrow was engaged in battle with a group of about 80 goblins. Leo mentioned that it must be in the northeastern forest and ordered the man to quickly gather members ready for dispatch. After all the members were gathered, Leo informed them that Five Arrows was fighting the goblins to protect the city of Saci, and they couldn't abandon their guildmates, so they should lend them their strength. He also emphasized that it was the time for the Adventurers Guild to unite, to which they all agreed and cheered. Then Leo suggested they should split into 3 teams, the red team, blue team, and green team. He told him that the yellow team was his, and his task was to relay the situation among the teams. Leo also informed them that Roy and the red team would go to rescue the 5 arrows, and the green team would surround the goblins and trap them. He ordered him to guide them to the 5 arrows and work as their messenger. Leo concluded by saying that if all teams collaborated well, the operation would succeed, and no one would die, to which they all replied with a resounding yes. Meanwhile, in the forest, Whisker asked his team when the reinforcements would arrive because he was running out of arrows. The man told him to stay calm because they would be there soon. A moment later, while Whisker and the others were still fighting, Roy and the red team arrived to help him. Whisker remarked that they had taken forever. Roy ordered Toro to let the blue team know to secure an escape route, to which Toro replied with an okay and told Roy to take the potions with them. Roy grabbed them and asked if they weren't valuable and if he was sure. Toro replied that it was alright, he had made them himself, so he was sure they worked fine. Then he used his stealth cloak and told Roy that he would convey the message to the blue team right away. A moment later, he arrived at the blue team and asked them if they could secure an escape route. The man replied that it would help if the green team could divert the enemy's attention for them. He replied that he understood and headed toward the green team to inform them that the blue team needed support. However, the lady told him that they hadn't anticipated that number of enemies, so they couldn't break free right now. She asked if he could ask HQ for more reinforcements. He then headed toward HQ and told Leo that the situation was dire, with too many goblins, and they needed reinforcements. He also informed Leo that all teams were pinned down by the goblins and were requesting assistance. Leo acknowledged the situation and instructed him to return to the guild and update the other members. Afterward, he should rest up because they could handle the rest. Leo and his team immediately advanced and faced a swarm of goblins running toward them to attack. Leo swung his axe forward, cutting off the heads of the goblins in front of him. However, a goblin appeared at his side, startling him. Fortunately, Daz swiftly cut the goblin into pieces. Leo infused his axe with some of his power while thanking Daz and slammed it onto the ground, breaking it into pieces and sending the goblins flying into the air. Daz swiftly attacked every goblin in the air while responding to Leo that there was no problem. Meanwhile, Moe raised his sword and swung it forward, killing many goblins in one stroke. He shouted that they were so cool, but then he realized that he needed to return to the guild. He immediately ran to the guild house and opened the door, prompting the adventurers inside to ask him worriedly how it went. He exhaustively told everyone that Leo and the others were on their way, so it should be okay. Just to be sure, maybe someone could. But before he could finish his sentence, he slowly fell to the floor and collapsed, making everyone run toward him in worry. Later, he opened his eyes in shock and immediately sat up, seeing everyone there and feeling relieved that everyone was safe. Roy told him that the potions he had given them really helped because thanks to them, they could fight without worrying about getting hurt. He told Roy that he was just relieved everyone was safe, and it was the least he could do. However, Roy told him that he was talking nonsense and thanked him for relaying the messages between teams because 5 arrows had been saved. He knew that he had done his part, but despite it, he still felt uneasy about not having any combat skills. Somehow, he felt more adept at swordsmanship than anything else, but it was not enough because he'd like to test his abilities against goblins. However, they moved in groups, so it was dangerous to fight them alone. He realized that joining a team to fight alongside would be ideal, but he wondered who would accept a kid like him. Then he opened the door to his room, knowing that in the end, what he needed to do was stay the same. He lay on his bed, guessing that it was back to training again tomorrow. The next day, an old lady walked into their guild, greeting everyone with a good day. Several days after the goblin battle, he noticed a quest on the bulletin board and grabbed it. He then approached Nay and told her that he'd like to take their quest. However, a man suddenly appeared in front of him, leaving him confused. Guild staff member Marco thanked him for his hard work and informed him that he would handle the quest paperwork. Confused, he asked Marco where Nay was and inquired about her absence from the guild. Marco whispered to him that it seemed Nay's parents had come unexpectedly. He asked Marco why they were whispering all of a sudden, and Marco replied that they mentioned something about matchmaking. He told Marco that it sounded serious, and Marco informed him that many adventurers were interested in Nay too. Suddenly, the man shouted and asked them if it was true, leaving both of them surprised. The man then shouted to everyone to listen and revealed that there was a matchmaking proposal for Nay, shocking everyone. Many men expressed their dismay, with one of them saying he thought he had something special with Nay, and another crying for his beloved Nay. However, his friend reminded him that Nay did not belong to him alone, as she belonged to all of them. Others vowed to drive away the potential suitor, and another man shouted that he wouldn't forgive that person, prompting the lady in the center to tell everyone to calm down. Roy asked Toro if he hadn't heard anything, and Toro replied that he hadn't. Roy and the other men fell into a silent despair. Then, one of the men angrily asked him why Nay had favored him, calling him a useless brat. He wondered why he was getting dragged into this situation. Suddenly, someone grabbed his shoulder, and Roy told him to follow Nay today and report back to them. He asked Roy why it had to be him and mentioned that he couldn't because he had already applied for a quest. He asked Marco to confirm it, but Marco informed him that he could go because he hadn't processed the quest yet, which irritated him. He thought to himself for Marco to do his work, and in the end, he agreed to follow Roy's request. Before leaving, he told the man who had shouted at him earlier that if anything happened, he would take responsibility, but the man simply told him to go, and they would be waiting for his report. Roy wished him good luck. A moment later, he was on the roof of one of the houses, knowing that Nay should be around there. He spotted her and thought he had found his target. He wondered who the man next to her was and if he was her rumored matchmaking candidate. He noticed that the man looked quite impressive, which could be bad news for everyone. However, he knew he needed to verify things first. He jumped off the roof and landed on a pile of dried grass, surprising everyone nearby. He peeked to get a better look at them and stood up, thinking that he had recognized something suspicious about the distance between them. Suddenly, an old man approached him and asked if he was okay after falling from up there. He gestured to the old man to be silent, and when he looked back at Nay and the man, he was shocked to see that they had disappeared. He ran away swiftly, ignoring the old man's calls to wait up. He was preoccupied with the thought that he needed to find out what was happening between those two, or else the guild would be in chaos. He then imagined the man professing his love to Nay and proposing marriage, causing Nay to blush in surprise. He envisioned them falling in love, which led to him shouting in frustration. He wondered how he would break the news to everyone in the guild if Nay got engaged. Suddenly, a hand touched his shoulder, and Nay asked him what he was doing there. He nervously asked Nay who that man was but quickly covered his mouth, realizing what he was saying. Nay, looking confused, explained that the man had asked for directions, and she had helped him. She mentioned that her parents were there and invited him to join them for a meal. Shortly after, a warm meal was prepared, and he found himself sitting with Nay and her parents. He couldn't resist asking if the matchmaking story was true, causing Nay to spit out her coffee. A few days earlier, Nay's mother had arrived at the guild and approached Nay, surprising her. They began to chat, while Marco eavesdropped, wondering if the woman was Nay's mother and what they were discussing. He overheard Nay's mother suggesting that if Nay didn't have a boyfriend, she should consider matchmaking. Back in the present, Nay told him that it was just a joke her mother had made, prompting him to tell Marco in his mind to cut him some slack. Nay's mother apologized to him and explained that Nay had told her she hadn't dated anyone, so she thought matchmaking might be helpful. Nay's father jokingly suggested he could consider marrying their daughter when he's older, leading Nay to tell her father to stop bothering him. He noticed that they appeared to be a close-knit family from their warm interactions, making him wonder how his parents from his previous life were doing. Feeling sad, he thought that his parents must be devastated by his mysterious death, especially after gaining admission to one of the most prestigious universities. All he had done was cause them problems. Nay, concerned, asked if he was alright, and he replied that he was fine. He swore that he would do well in this world to make his parents proud. The next day, he was sweating in fear as he looked at someone and fidgeted without saying a word. Roy and another man were also sweating in fear. The rest of the men were on the ground, kneeling in front of him, while Leo observed them all. Leo cracked his fingers in anger as he looked at the men, with the lady in the center asking what had happened. Before she could get an answer, Nay heard Marco laughing and telling everyone that he wondered how that matchmaking story had unfolded after they had sent Toro to tail Nay. He looked at the kneeling people in front of him and told them that they still had their quests, so they should just drop the matter. Leo, however, told him that he was also a victim of their mischief, so it was okay to be upset. Leo angrily scolded the men, stating that using a child to spy on a guild staff member's personal life was shameful. Nay tried to defend them, saying it didn't bother her, so they should be forgiven. Everyone thought Nay was kind, like an angel, but when Leo smiled at them, the color drained from their faces, and they saw a formidable lion before them. Leo told them to consider themselves lucky, and he sentenced them to a month of errand quests. This decision left them in defeat and shock. Errand quests were known for being boring, harsh, dirty, and poorly paid. The ones at that time of year were even more demanding, involving repairing the city wall, which included extracting stones, transporting them, and stacking them. It was all heavy labor, and due to the low rewards, it was one of the less popular quests. Additionally, when Toro was in the G rank, he wasn't strong enough to take on such tasks. They remembered Leo telling them that the reward wasn't that bad this time, and it seemed they had allocated a generous budget. However, Roy and the men with him were already exhausted just by looking at it. A moment later, they heard someone hitting a stone and saw men working hard at the quarry. For some reason, Toro was also there, but he wasn't interested in transporting or stacking rocks. He had come because he believed that the eyes of the truth might be useful. He looked up and noticed someone, an old man, telling them to get to work. However, before they started, he insisted on teaching them the basics. He pointed to a rock and asked if they could see it. Then, he instructed them to find its center and strike. The rock shattered into pieces. He encouraged them to try it for themselves, leaving them shocked and unable to believe that this was all the explanation they received. They began to work while the old man explained that sometimes the stones had valuable materials inside them. If they found something, they should let him know, and if it was valuable, they'd be rewarded. Afterward, he decided to try something and activated his Eyes of the Truth skill. He looked around and saw coal rocks everywhere, but then he noticed something shining. He faced the shining rock, wondering what it was. As he raised his pickaxe to hit it, the old man told him that those piles were waste rock, so he could ignore them. Nevertheless, he still struck the rock with his axe, and a light emanated from it. They looked at it in surprise, and when the light disappeared, it revealed a piece of mithril ore with an S rarity. The old man shouted in disbelief and asked everyone to stop what they were doing because it was mithril ore. The system tells him that the condition he who unearths treasure with a single strike was confirmed, so he had acquired precision. He shouted that he had only swung the pickaxe once. Days passed, and he still didn't quite understand his new ability called precision. However, he realized that precision was involved in things like what he was doing. He remembered something called precision shooting and continued hitting the targets in the center while thinking that it would come in handy. Later, as the sun went down, Marco gave him a bag of money, telling him that it was 100 gold coins for the mithril, and asked him what he was going to do with all that money. He replied that there was something he had wanted to do, and he knew that he owed his survival in that world to everyone there. He shouted to everyone that the food and drinks were on him today, which made everyone cheer and start to drink and have fun. Then he saw Nay and asked her if she had any ideas on what to do with the remaining money. She suggested donating to the orphanage, just like Mob had done. This amazed him, and he agreed, telling Mob in his mind that he was as manly as always. The next day, the old man outside the guild asked him if it was true that the guild's kid had found mithril ore. He replied that everyone at the quarry had witnessed it. Meanwhile, inside the guild house, everyone was gathered, laughing and teasing Toro. They told him they had heard he had been dealing with bad guys and had brought a dead old man back to life. He shouted at them, saying that there was no way either of those rumors was true and asked what he was supposed to do if such rumors spread. Roy called him and assured him that he had denied those rumors for him, knowing that they would trouble him. Toro looked back at them with tears in his eyes and thanked them for their help. He was grateful for everyone's assistance but knew he needed to address those rumors. Later, he emerges and activates his stealth cloak skill. He notices people gathering on the side, piquing his curiosity about what is happening. As he approaches them, he sees a puppet show and thinks that there isn't much going on in this town. Suddenly, he hears someone and wonders if they just called his name. The murmurs persist, prompting him to move closer to another group watching a different puppet show. He peers at the stage and is shocked to see a puppet resembling him, declaring that he will defeat the goblins and sell the mithril ore to the feudal lord, Baron Sacy. The puppet, mimicking his likeness, then announces that he will donate the money to the orphanage, causing him to tremble and wonder if this is truly about him. The puppet shows serve as a medium to pass down local legends and stories. Once ritualistic, they now focus more on entertainment, with rumors about Toro becoming part of local amusement. He recalls the saying, "Anyone can start a rumor, but none can stop one," realizing that these puppet shows will only spread the rumors further. This unwanted attention could lead to trouble, something he desperately wants to avoid. Slapping himself to regain composure, he acknowledges that he has no choice but to consider a risky move, using his last resort. He looks at the puppet show with a mix of pity for the puppeteers and determination, knowing he must combat entertainment with entertainment. A moment later, Nay looks at him confused and calls his name. He responds, lifting a pile of wood. She asks why he is carrying so much wood and tells him he's attracting quite a bit of attention. He replies that he's thinking about creating a game for the sake of his future, making her even more puzzled. She asks what he means by a game for his life's sake. He explains that the town has become too fixated on him, so he plans to create a game to distract them and make them forget about him. Understanding his intention to divert their attention, she tells him that creating something that captures everyone's interest overnight is a tall order. He assures her not to worry, revealing that he has a secret weapon. Worried, she asks what he means by a secret weapon, noting his mischievous look. He reassures her that it's nothing criminal, so she doesn't need to worry. He knows that fantasy tropes are overused in this world and that Isekai enthusiasts might find them boring. But he can't express this openly. Thus, he has no choice but to rely on a classic, overused idea. He decides to call it reversing. First, he cuts out a square board and draws lines to create an 8x8 grid. Then, he paints flat, round discs black on one side and white on the other. Moments later, his game is complete. They asks him how to play, and he explains that the objective is to flip their opponent's pieces by surrounding them with their own. The player with the most discs at the end wins. When placing a disc, they must do so on a square where they can flank their opponent's pieces with their own, flipping all sandwiched pieces horizontally, vertically, or diagonally to their color. Controlling the corners is key to controlling the game. She tells him she wants to try it out immediately. He agrees, and they begin to play, with Nei taking the black pieces and him the white. Nei makes the first move, confidently telling him she won't lose. Initially, Nei has 4 black pieces and he only has 1 white piece in the middle, but as time passes, their battle becomes intense and the lead changes frequently. Nei then makes a move, asking him how he likes that, which turns the pieces to 12 black versus 18 white. He responds by flipping the board to 24 white and 23 black. The final score is 40 black to 24 white, meaning Nei has won. She joyfully tells him she can't believe she beat the creator. He asks if they can play another round, to which she agrees, and he vows not to lose this time. She replies that it seems he has yet to grasp her strength. Determined, he decides to get serious and they start again. Hours later, Nei stretches her arms after they finish and tells him that for a simple game, it was surprisingly profound. She then asks if he was going easy on her during their first game, to which he awkwardly replies he was not, making her call him a liar. Nonetheless, she tells him it was a fun game and she is sure everyone will enjoy it, boosting his confidence. However, he realizes there is a crucial problem: who will claim to be the creator and register it with the commercial guild. Until now, the recipes from his previous life were just food, so there was no need for registration. Some tried to imitate them, but none could match the original at the guild restaurant, thanks to the Adventurers Guild's stellar reputation. No one blatantly copied it, but he knew that a game was different. Nei asks him what he will do. He replies that he thought about using the guild's name for Reversi, but if he registers it with the commercial guild, they'll need the creator's personal name. He considers using their branch guild master, Leo, but worries that Leo, being well known, might be suspected. He tells Nei that ideally, they need someone trustworthy, not greedy, and with strong backing to fend off potential trouble. He then asks if she knows anyone like that. She thinks for a moment and then suggests someone who is quite close to him, leaving him confused. He finally understands and figures out who Nei is talking about. He tells Nei that he knows she is talking about Mobe because Mobe is a sincere man who donates to the orphanage and is one of the top adventurers in the Sacy Branch Guild. She assures him that Mobe would continue donating a part of his income to the orphanage, and as a Silver Sword member, Mobe is willing to take on a long-term quest away from the city. She is confident Mobe would gladly accept. He agrees, knowing Mobe is the right person for the job and someone he can trust. After discussing it with Mobe, they both head to the Guildmaster's office. Mobe tells Leo that the orphanage can benefit from his increased income, and he has been wanting to go out and aim higher with his team. Mobe asks if he is sure about it and if he won't regret it if Reversi becomes famous later. Mobe suggests it may be okay for now but not later. He confidently replies that he is fine with it and that receiving a part of the profits while avoiding trouble is convenient for him. Mobe laughingly agrees, noting that it is a mutually beneficial deal. He then asks Mobe if they are good to go, to which Mobe replies yes and extends his hand to close the deal, witnessed by their guild master, Leo. A moment later, he finishes preparing and thinks that for the general public, a simple board will suffice, while for collectors and nobles, he will make limited editions with fancy, footed boards like shogi sets. He realizes that his precision ability, which was understated until now, will be very useful. It's incredibly precise, making it easy to measure lengths and refine his hand-eye coordination. He knows that with it, he could even become a top-notch carpenter. After completing a limited edition of Reversi, Nei sees it and is amazed by its beauty and ultra-rare quality. Its status is wood-carved, and its price is 15 gold coins. She lovingly tells him that it is a work of art, and he thanks her for the compliment. He then stares at the simple board of Reversi, knowing that good products don't always sell themselves, which means promotion is key. He looks at Roy and the cat girl, gives them a thumbs up, signaling it is time for a special operation, and they give him a thumbs up back, assuring him to leave it to them. Roy then loudly asks what the game is, acting as if it is really interesting, which catches a man's attention. The man asks Roy about the game, and Roy replies that it is a completely new game, unlike anything he has played before. The man tells Roy it sounds fun and asks if he can try it. Roy agrees but warns the man to be careful because the girl in front of them is really strong. The man tells the cat girl to go easy on him, but she replies that she won't. People inside the guild start talking about the battle on the 8x8 board. and the cat girl acts amazed when the man actually beats her, complimenting him on his skill. The man then plays with a red-haired man, who also pretends to lose. They give him a thumbs up, indicating that the special mission was successful, and he returns the gesture, encouraging them to keep up the pace. The decoy customer strategy sparks interest among patrons, leading to a sales corner being set up to sell Reversi immediately. In just a few hours, the shop is packed with customers lining up for Reversi, and the queue extends outside. He recalls Leo's advice to avoid complaints from the feudal lord for popularizing the game without his knowledge, and is reassured knowing he has already sent limited editions as gifts. He walks around, noting that he has also given distribution rights to merchants who deal with the Adventurers Guild. In a town like Saisi, lacking entertainment, a trendy game quickly catches on with the youth, and since the rules are easy to understand, everyone from kids to adults can play. Suddenly, he hears commotion nearby, piquing his curiosity. Excusing himself to get closer, he sees even the elderly playing easily. The old man moves, exciting the crowd as old Tia dominates the center of the board. But then the old man's opponent, Bjorn, makes a huge comeback, thrilling the crowd even more. He realizes that the reception is better than he thought, and Operation Reversi is a great success. The next day, the man tells Mob that Reversi is selling like crazy, with both the cheap and expensive versions flying off the shelves. Mob replies that it's great to hear and reminds the man that he has left all the business dealings to the guild, so he should talk to them about it. The man agrees, understanding. Mob watches the man walk away happily and then turns to Toro, asking if he heard the news. Toro replies that he has already discussed expanding production with the guild leader. Mob acknowledges this, expressing his hope that with things going so well, he might be able to compete in the big city with his team, and adds that he owes Toro one. Toro replies that the feeling is mutual, and they bump their arms together in a show of respect and trust. Half a month later, Silver Sword clears all the high-rank quests in Saisi and gets promoted to B rank. Armed with a letter of recommendation from Branch Guildmaster Leo, they set off for a bigger town. Meanwhile, he is in Leo's office, and Leo is staring at him in silence, making him worried. He notices that Leo looks really grumpy, causing him to swallow nervously. Leo says something, but he doesn't catch it, causing him to panic and ask what he just said. Leo slams his hand on the table, making him jump a little in fear. Leo angrily says that while it is good that adventurers from other places are coming here, their behavior is bad and they are causing trouble with the locals, which hurts the guild's reputation. The current top adventurers are the C-rank 5 Arrows and the hastily formed C-rank Azure Protectors, but compared to Mobe's Silver Sword, they still have a long way to go. Toro has been listening to Leo's complaints when the meeting was supposed to be about expanding Reversi's production network. Leo frustratingly tells him that internal security is worsening. He has requested additional troops from the feudal lord, but it's not going well. Instead, they are being pulled out to subdue bandits and control crime. Toro keeps silent, thinking that Leo's complaints seem endless. Finally, Leo sighs to calm himself and mentions that sales at the relaxing inn are still good, and the commission from Reversi sales is what is keeping them afloat. Toro feels relieved that they are finally getting back to the main topic. However, Leo then tells him that there is a substantial order coming from the capital, according to the merchants, and they also want 10 of their limited edition boards. Toro is surprised to hear that they need 10 Reversi boards, amazed but not entirely unexpected since the capital is on another level. But then Leo adds that they want him to accompany the merchant caravan, which shocks him even more. Leo explains that they want him there for a month as a Reversi instructor. Toro protests, saying it's unnecessary given the simplicity of the rules and reminds Leo that he is still just a kid. Leo insists that if they request it, there is no helping it. He adds that while Toro might not like standing out, no one in the capital knows him. Besides, it wouldn't be bad to see the capital while he is young. Toro sighs in defeat, but then Leo announces that he is being promoted to E rank starting today, shocking him further. Toro asks why so suddenly. Leo stands up and explains that the E rank adventurers from elsewhere would be worse than him, so he needs to promote him for balance. It's also good for Toro, even if he doesn't like it. Toro, feeling conflicted, agrees. Leo tells him he is leaving the rest to him until the scheduled date, and Toro nods in agreement. Later, Toro is in the forest, picking some poisu grass. As the sun sets, he is in the workshop creating limited edition Reversi boards, thinking that with precision, even the finest work becomes easy. In the middle of the night, at the Adventurers Guild, the red-haired man and Roy are struggling to play Reversi. When Roy loses again, he throws the board in frustration. Meanwhile, Toro is at a table helping Nay with paperwork. Adventurers from another town see the man handing papers to him and teasingly ask if there are even kids in this backwater guild, calling it an eyesore. The men teasingly said that Toro looked at the quest like a pro earlier, and asked when the guild started babysitting kids. Another man added that he wouldn't understand the countryside's common sense. Toro noticed their badges and guessed that these must be some of the poorly behaved E-rank adventurers Leo had mentioned. The Saisi adventurer members were pissed upon hearing the other town adventurers teasing Toro. One of the men, who had long ears, said mockingly that having a kid like Toro would make others look down on them too. But then, someone shouted at the man that he was one to talk. It was Roy, the C-rank Azure Protector's team leader, who couldn't contain his anger. Roy walked closer to the men and told them that, in case they were blind, the kid they were insulting, Toro was a fine adventurer and an E-ranker like them. The other Seisei members agreed. The long-eared man teasingly asked Roy if he really said Toro was an adventurer and the same E rank as them, which he found exaggerated even for a C rank. Roy insisted it was true and explained that, unlike where they came from, the quality of adventurers in Seisei was high, with a former rank guild leader and martial arts instructor teaching them. Even kids became stronger than them. The Seisei members surrounded the two men, laughingly telling Roy he didn't have to say that much and assuring the two men that they were all good folks there, which made the two men panic and apologize as they rushed out of the guild. Toro was amazed to hear that Leo and Daz were a rank. Roy then called out to him, asking if he was okay. The cat girl told him not to let it get to him, and Whisker assured him that he was a fine adventurer. He thanked them for their concern and assured them that it didn't bother him, which made them sigh in relief. He felt teary because he came here for bonds like these and was very thankful for them from the bottom of his heart. The next day, the adventurers from the other town rushed out of Seisei in fear, and a man appeared in front of the adventurers guild. Inside the guild, Toro was busy looking at the quest board and talking to an adventurer when the man walked inside and approached him. Nae, who was busy talking to an adventurer, noticed the man approaching Toro, which confused her. The man didn't stop until he was right behind Toro. He then shouted, asking Toro what he thought he was doing there. The man is his father and orders him to answer, but when he doesn't respond, his father launches a punch. As it is about to hit him, he increases his agility and easily dodges the punch, surprising his father. Confused, his father looks back and demands who said he could dodge, but Toro remains silent. This infuriates his father, who rushes to grab him. But Toro ducks down to dodge again. When his father tries to grab him from below, Toro swiftly moves to the side, causing his father to trip over his own feet and struggle to balance himself, ultimately falling to the floor. Nae rushes out from the reception, shouting at his father, asking what he is doing. The red-haired man tells his father that violence is not allowed inside the guild, while the cat lady tries to help his father up and calm him down. His father, however, pushes the cat lady away and grabs Toro's hand. He then demands to know where Toro lives and orders him to pack his things because they are going home. Toro pushes his father's hand away and firmly replies that he has no intention of going back. His father launches another punch at him, asking who he thinks he is talking to, but Toro once again disappears and reappears behind his father, ready to punch. He thinks about how the man in front of him hasn't changed at all, making him want to retaliate. However, he calms himself down, remembering that violence is forbidden inside the guild. He then tells his father that they should talk outside, where they won't disturb everyone. As they leave, the adventurers worry and wonder if he will be okay. A moment later, at the inn, his father angrily asks him where the money from selling the mithril is and insists that everything Toro owns belongs to him. He demands all the money Toro has earned. Toro realizes that just as he suspected, the rumor has reached the village, and now, after completely forgetting about him for so long, his father is playing the parent card. Toro replies that he has no money to give, which enrages his father. His father tries to grab him again, calling him an ungrateful brat, but Toro easily slaps his hand away, wondering when his father will realize it's hopeless. His father shouts that Toro is ungrateful and asks how he could forget what his parents have done for him. Toro retorts by asking what his father has done for him, recalling only daily beatings. His father claims they were teaching him discipline, but Toro sarcastically agrees. At that moment, two men appear, asking his father if he has gotten the money from his son. One of the men asks Toro if he is indeed Toro, to which he replies yes. The man tells Toro that his father owes them money and that they will be in trouble if he doesn't pay up, making Toro realize that they want him to pay off his father's debts. His father, shaking in fear, tells the men that he'll pay right away. Toro asks the men if they have a loan agreement, which makes both men smile and reply affirmatively. One of the men then shows the paper to Toro, but he points out that it isn't a loan agreement, which shocks the man, who shouts and asks if Toro can read. Toro replies that the paper is an instruction from their boss, who said to start nice and find out how much money he has, then squeeze out as much as possible. Toro tells the men that if there is no loan agreement, he won't pay, and either way, he doesn't consider the man behind him as his father, so he still wouldn't pay. His father shouts at the men to wait a minute and claims his son must be lying. But then a sharp butcher knife is thrust in front of his father. The innkeeper steps in and tells his father that it is rude to behave like this in front of other customers. He warns that if his father bothers Toro, the entire town will be against him, so he'd better not push too hard if he values his life. The other adventurers in the inn agree with the innkeeper, shouting that Toro treated everyone generously and donated all his remaining money to the orphanages, which is a well-known story. They surround the two adventurers from the other town and Toro's father, who see the innkeeper staring at them, making them sweat in fear because the innkeeper is a former adventurer. His father then runs away, shocking the two men who ask where he is going. Before the men can chase his father, Toro tells them to wait a moment. One of the men asks what he wants now and tells him that if he is not going to pay, he should just leave them alone. Toro tells the man that even though he has cut ties with his father, he apologizes for the trouble his father caused. He then throws a coin at them, telling them it is for their trouble and there is no need for a receipt. The man catches it and is surprised to see that it is a gold coin. Realizing that Hawk, Toro's father, is running away, the two men rush to chase after him. Toro looks back at the inn caretakers and sincerely apologizes for the disturbance, but the innkeeper tells him it is okay. They chat without noticing a man on the side listening to them. Later, Toro is back in the forest harvesting plants when the man from the inn appears behind him. He notices and feels frustrated, wondering why the bad stuff comes all at once. He then faces the man, exhales to calm himself down, and positions himself. A few minutes earlier, he noticed the man hiding behind a tree, eyeing his sword made by Angus, valued at 15 gold coins. The man was shocked and couldn't believe it was crafted by Angus. The man then came out and ordered him to hand over the sword, but he sighed in frustration, placed his hand on the ground, and activated his aura sense, detecting some local adventurers nearby. He ran away quickly, shouting to the man that he'll see him soon. When he found a suitable spot, he stopped running and faced the man who was chasing him. The man shouted that he was not fit to carry that sword and should drop it and leave. Instead, he shouted for help, saying someone was after his sword. The local adventurers heard his call for help and recognized his voice, wondering if he was in trouble. They rushed to the source of the shout and worriedly asked what was wrong. He smiled, knowing that his witnesses were there and the setup was complete. When the man attacked him with a crossbow, he activated his stealth cloak and increased his agility by 5, allowing him to dodge the man's attack. He punched the man in the face, thinking the witnesses would justify his action as self-defense. The man passed out as the local adventurers arrived and surrounded him, asking if he was okay. He felt relieved, knowing he could finally continue with his quest. Later, in the Sacy Adventurers Guild, he was looking at stacks of high-quality lumber and wondered if he should finish the rest of the limited edition reversey boards. He began to carve, activating his precision skill to meticulously craft each piece. Hours went by as he silently focused on his work. He stretched his body after finally finishing 10 limited edition reversey boards and proudly admired his masterpieces. Despite the pain in his shoulder, he was excited. He realized that even with the precision skill, creating so many boards in such a short time was very taxing. Yet, he knew that this skill allowed him to recreate handiwork down to the last detail. Without creativity and talent to support it, good things couldn't be created, making him glad he had tried his best during art classes. The next day, he was with the red-haired man playing reversey when someone asked how things were going and if he thought he could make it. He looked back to see Paulo, a merchant of Sacy. Paulo asked how many boards he had finished, and he proudly replied that he had completed all 10. Paulo was shocked and looked at him with admiration, saying he had hoped for at least 6 as per their contract. Paulo then shakes his hand while respectfully asking if he really has no intention of retiring as an adventurer and pursuing the pinnacle of his craft. However, someone then smacks Paulo's bald head and tells him not to dare poach their promising member. Paulo looks back and responds that Toro's skill could earn him much more money than he currently makes. Leo retorts that if Toro leaves, he will stop doing business with Paulo's trading company. Paulo apologizes to Leo, explaining that he was just joking. Leo dryly remarks that he thought Paulo's excuse was unbelievable, but then they both laugh together. Toro asks Leo if there is any news on the trip to the capital, but Leo inquires if Toro's duty has been decided. Paulo responds that the person seems to be a noble and advises Toro to get himself some new clothes while there is still time, offering to introduce him to a good tailor. Toro asks what they mean by new clothes, wondering if the issue is getting bigger than he anticipated and if it is really okay. Days pass, and the time for him to go arrives. Leo tells him it is best to leave as early as possible because nighttime in the wilderness is dangerous, with not just monsters but rumors of bandits too. Leo asks why Toro isn't wearing his shiny new clothes. Nay appears beside him and asks if he made new clothes and why he didn't tell her when she wished she could see them. Toro replies that those are formal clothes for meeting nobility, not something he'd wear on a trip. They begin to load their things into the carriage. When they are done, he waves goodbye and tells them he is leaving. Nay waves back, wishing him a safe trip. They head out on their journey, and it is Toro's first trip that goes without a hitch, partly thanks to traveling on the highway. He notices a lot of traffic on the highway and troops stationed at every rest stop, making it very safe. However, a common fantasy plot where the merchant convoy is ambushed halfway through the journey plays out in his head, but he dismisses it as unnecessary concern because he is with Mina, a solo female adventurer and a C rank. Toro tells Mina that the guy approaching them from the front seems suspicious and appears to be gauging them. She looks outside and asks if he might be a bandit scout with an appraisal skill, but they know they can't be careless. She asks what he thinks the convoy looks like to him. He replies that on the surface, it appears to be 3 loaded carriages, 10 guards, 3 coachmen, 3 passengers including Paulo, and 1 child. To attack a group of 17, the bandits would need to bring a comparable number, and on a highway, it is a question of whether that risk is worth taking. A moment later, at the rest stop, they are both eating when they hear a loud noise from outside, surprising them. Toro asks what it was, and Mina tells him she has a bad feeling about it. He wonders if the bandits changed their target to the convoy behind them. A moment later, according to the soldiers who examined the scene, by the time they arrived, the bandits were gone and the convoy was wiped out. Their hope for the convoy's safety proved futile, making him think that reality is cruel. Later, the horse carrying them stops and waits for the carriage in front of them to move. Farmers outside notice their carriages. Mina excitedly calls him and tells him that the capital is in sight. He opens his window curtain and is amazed to see the length of the city wall, which is incomparable to Sacy's. Paulo tells him that when they get closer, the height will surprise him too. A moment later, they arrive at the capital gate, and their mouths drop open at the sight of the huge gate, making him nervous. Mina walks closer to him and closes his mouth, laughingly telling him that his mouth is wide open. They proceed to move forward as the gate opens for them. Inside, they see elegant people walking, which amazes them even more. He notices that it looks like another world, with races he hasn't seen before. Paulo tells him that they are going straight to the merchant's headquarters, so he should come with them, which he agrees to, but then he forgets about it and sits next to Paulo as they head to the merchant's headquarters. A moment later, they arrive at the headquarters, and Whisker tells Paulo that they will inform the Adventurers Guild about completing their mission, and about the bandits, just in case. Paulo agrees and tells Whisker to gather there in the morning 5 days from now. Paulo then asks him and Mina what their plans are. He replies that he'll stay with Paulo's group, and Mina says that she is currently Toro's bodyguard, so she'll stay too. He waves goodbye to his adventurer members, noticing that the Five Arrows team seems at home in the capital. Mina tells him that they often did these kinds of missions, and she did too. He asks her if it was about getting used to it. She replies that it was only difficult at first and advises him that if he ever gets lost, he should use the Tower of the Imperial Castle as a guide. He tells her that it sounds like she has done it before, and she replies yes. She then tells him that she wandered around for half a day trying to find the Adventurers Guild headquarters before finally noticing the tower. He replies that he understands, but wonders if she is serious, joking, or just a natural airhead. A moment later, they arrived at the hotel, and he was amazed to see the inside because it was the first decent accommodation he had had as Toro. He tells Mina that the hotel is quite luxurious and asks if they all like it, but she replies that it is just for him, adding that her usual place costs a fifth of this, shocking him. He asks if this place is 5 times pricier, and she replies that as a noble Reversi tutor, he needs to stay in a decent place to avoid staining their reputation. He understands that it is about reputation and she agrees. He tells her that he is getting nervous, but she reminds him that he won't last a month if he is nervous all the time. He reassures himself that it is only for a month and wishes he could return with them after 5 days. Mina smiles at him and tells him there should be no whining, to which he respectfully replies yes. They wave each other goodbye and she advises him to take a bath and get a good night's sleep. He follows her advice, thoroughly enjoying his warm bath. The next day, he greets Mina with a good morning. Mina, who has 2 huge black circles under her eyes, greets him back. He asks if she is not a morning person, and she replies that she is, but just feels cranky in the morning. He understands that this is part of why someone might not be a morning person, but he keeps his mouth shut. They then both start eating their sandwiches, chewing them in disappointment. He asks her if she doesn't think the white bread there is hard to chew, and she replies that the relaxing inn is special and even something like white bread is considered a luxury there. He realizes that he has gotten a little too used to the lavish foods he invented. He sadly says that he wants to eat ginger pork, and Mina imagines it, telling him to stop because he is making her remember the taste. As a regular at the relaxing inn, Mina has also developed a refined palate. They then arrive somewhere, and he is amazed by the place. She tells him that they are at the Garfish Traders, meaning they still have a ways to go. The trade representative, Garfish, a 45-year-old man, laughingly meets them and tells him that when he received the Reversi board that Paulo had sent on a fast horse, he knew right away that Reversi was going to be a hit. Garfish then introduces him to his children, proudly saying that even they are big Reversi fans. He is convinced that it will find popularity even in the capital, so he has been promoting it to the nobles he has connections with, and sure enough, it has become a sensation. Toro responds that it is gratifying to hear and that he is sure his teacher, Mo, would be overjoyed too. Toro's role there is to be an apprentice of Mo, the inventor, no more, no less, and he knows he can't make any mistakes. Garfish then tells him that in addition to being Mobe's apprentice, he has the skills to create works of art such as the limited edition boards, and he is in awe of how young and capable he is. Toro awkwardly smiles, asking Garfish to keep it a secret that he was the one who made them. Garfish understands and agrees, saying that if word got out, the nobles might come to him in droves. He had only told them that the boards were made by a Saisi craftsman and would continue to say that. However, he asks for a limited edition board as hush money. Toro agrees, knowing that Garfish would see it as a guarantee of his silence. The next day, in the first-class nobility residential area, Toro tells Paulo that the surroundings have changed so drastically that it scares him, and the mansions are castle-sized. Paulo, sweating with nervousness, tries to calm him down, admitting it is his first time there too, which only makes Toro more panicked. He then looks at Mina, whose calmness reassures him. She tells him that as a bodyguard, she has to remain calm at all times, but if she were in his position, she'd be soiling her pants. This stuns Toro, making him wonder if they expect him not to worry after hearing about soiling his pants. But then Paulo and Mina laugh at his reaction, easing the tension. Their carriage arrives in front of the largest, most luxurious mansion of all, making Toro wonder just who in the world owns that mansion. Toro guesses that it is the mansion of a high-ranking noble even among the upper classes. Garfish then informs him that the mansion is not Count Eleno's residence, where they were initially scheduled to visit, but the mansion of Duke Valiera, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom. This shocks him to the bone. He knew that if they were talking about the Prime Minister, Valiera was the most powerful person after the king. At that moment, Toro realizes he is being called to meet someone very significant. A butler meets them inside the mansion and announces that everyone has arrived. The butler then opens the door and tells them to follow. As they enter, Toro activates his presence detection, noting that there are quite a lot of people present. The butler stops walking and tells them to wait in front of the door, to which they nervously agree. They are all shocked when they hear someone inside the room introducing Garfish as the representative of the Garfish traders and Toro as the Reversi tutor, along with his entourage, making Toro more nervous and wondering why they are being introduced with such grandeur. Suddenly, a voice in his head informs him that his special skill has been activated. The condition, being appraised by more than 10 people at once, has been met, and he has acquired appraisal inhibition, leaving him confused and wondering why this is happening now. He is stunned when the room door opens, revealing a room full of high-ranking nobles who seem to be sizing him up. He realizes that appraisal inhibition means he is being appraised. He decides to activate his skill, hiding his status from everyone. The nobles look at each other, seemingly confused, making him wonder if it worked. Someone then welcomes Garfish, which draws the nobles' attention. Duke Valiera addresses him, expressing surprise at how young the tutor is, despite hearing he was a child. They walk closer to the Duke, and as they approach, Duke Valiera leads him to a table with the limited edition Reversi boards. The Duke then addresses everyone, introducing Toro as the top disciple of the inventor of Reversi, and their tutor for the day. He suggests they give Toro a round of applause and announces that he will play about 3 matches with him as a demonstration. He was surprised and wondered if Duke Valiera was testing his ability, and if it wasn't a bit immature. Then he realized that from the Prime Minister's perspective, Duke Valiera had asked for a tutor and got a child, so it wasn't strange to feel mocked. He respectfully replied to Duke Valiera that he understood and that they should have a good game, knowing he had to be serious. When Duke Valiera was seated, Toro sat down across from him. The nobles whispered among themselves that Toro was quite well-mannered for a commoner's child, while Garfish and Paulo sweated nervously. Mina wondered if Toro could prove his skills against the Prime Minister while also flattering him. They all silently waited for the game to start. Toro respectfully told Duke Valiera to take the first move. In the first match, Duke Valiera played as black and Toro as white. The Duke managed to get 2 moves ahead, and a moment later, Duke Valiera smiled confidently with 9 tiles to Toro's 2. A nobleman disappointedly remarked that the top disciple didn't seem all that impressive, but a noblewoman replied that it wasn't Toro's fault. Rather, the Prime Minister was just too strong. She explained that they had all been playing against Duke Valiera these past few days, and he was exceptional. A moment later, the Duke hesitated to move when his tiles were 15, while Toro's tiles increased to 6. The Duke thought carefully, but the table turned as Toro managed to get 22 tiles to the Duke's 13. Minutes later, the Duke had 11 tiles and Toro had 29. The noblewoman remarked that it was impressive how the top disciple managed to turn the game around, but the nobleman replied that Duke Valiera's early aggression was also remarkable. When the first match ended, Toro won. Duke Valiera told him that it was expected of the inventor's top disciple, and that it was no wonder Mold chose him to be the tutor. Toro respectfully replied that he was honored. Duke Valiera then suggested they reset and move to the second game, which Toro agreed to. In the early minutes of the second match, the Duke got 10 tiles to Toro's 5, but a few minutes later, the table turned again. Toro gained 35 tiles to the Duke's 22. When the second match ended, Toro won again with 48 tiles to the Duke's 16. The nobles were shocked and asked if the beginning of the game was a deliberate setup. Duke Valiera, having a tough time, suggests they begin the third match. They start, and Toro gets the first move, gaining 23 white tiles while the Duke has 10. However, the Duke manages to turn the tables, getting 35 tiles while Toro has 20. When the third match is done, the result is a draw with 32 tiles each. Toro respectfully thanks Duke Valiera for playing, and the nobles clap, making him wonder if he is getting unnecessarily serious about reversing. A moment later, Toro advises the nobles that while taking corners is good, it doesn't guarantee a win. He emphasizes that Reversi is a game for enjoyment and the best thing is to play and have fun. Garfish then calls him over and tells him that he couldn't say it earlier, but he was amazing. Garfish notes that in all 3 games, Toro gave away an early advantage and then turned the tables in the endgame, even managing to draw the last game while allowing the Prime Minister his moment. Pablo nods repeatedly in agreement. Toro humbly replies that they are overestimating him, explaining that the Prime Minister learned from the first 2 games and adapted by the third game, leading to a draw. He isn't sure how it would go if they played again. Duke Valiera then appears behind him and calls him. Toro looks back and apologizes to the Duke for not noticing him. The Duke apologizes for testing him earlier and admits that Reversi, being so simple, really reveals the player's character, which is fascinating. He hasn't been playing long but had become overconfident. Seeing such a disparity in skill has made him aware of his own foolishness. Toro shakes Duke Valiera's hand, complimenting him on his resilience and adaptation, especially in the third game. He admits he isn't sure he could win if they played again, making Duke Valiera laugh and thank him. Duke Valiera then changes the topic and explains that the reason he called Toro there, replacing Count Eleno at the last minute, was to evaluate him on behalf of someone else. Toro asks what he means by evaluating him and wonders if the Duke is referring to the appraisal he felt when he entered. Duke Valiera replies that he has an S-rank appraisal skill and trusts his judgment of people. However, it seems Toro is immune to it, as he only caught a glimpse of his abilities before they vanished, appearing quite ordinary the next moment. It was a first for him, so it was quite surprising. Toro realizes that his new ability not only blocks appraisals, but also shows false information. Duke Valiera then asks if Toro doesn't mind dropping his powerful appraisal inhibition because he'd like to introduce him to someone and needs to trust him fully. Toro realizes that the Duke noticed his ability and guesses that maybe he can learn something about his Garbled Text skills. He replies that he understands and will reveal his abilities, but only to the Duke. They then enter a private room, and Toro feels nervous because Duke Valiera is staring at him. He looks around to confirm that no one is watching. He then deactivates his appraisal inhibition, and Duke Valiera is shocked by what he sees. Duke Valiera comments that it is intriguing. His stats are low, typical for a child his age, but significantly boosted by an ability called Precision. Duke Valiera looks at his appraisal and sees his stats. 24 health, 75 mana, 15 strength, 90 intelligence, 12 constitution, and 250 dexterity. Additionally, his skills include retrieve memories, purify, eyes of truth, knowledge of flora, presence detection, stealth cloak, precision, appraisal inhibition, blacksmith, alchemist, woodworker, swordsman, archery, and paint. Duke Valiera remarks that he has never heard of the eyes of truth but finds it fascinating how it links with his appraisal ability and presence detection. Toro feels completely exposed and shakes nervously. However, Duke Valiera points out that what is more intriguing is that, despite having the Garbled Text skill, Toro has managed to increase proficiency in multiple professions. Duke Valiera explains that usually, increasing proficiency should proportionally increase stats, but that isn't happening in Toro's case. He finds it puzzling, but Toro is relieved to hear that his professional proficiency has increased, confirming that his efforts haven't been in vain. Toro would like to ask for more details but knows he must restrain himself because Duke Valiera is the Prime Minister. Duke Valiera says it is strange because he has appraised Garbled Text skills before but couldn't decipher Toro's original skill. When Toro asks what he means, Duke Valiera replies that it is a skill requiring an S-rank appraisal or higher to identify. Normally, one can predict the skill based on trends and abilities and stat growth, but Toro's proficiency is increasing in diverse professions, which is beyond his appraisal skills. Toro recalls that Ney had said something similar before. Duke Valiera then tells him that if it were just martial arts, professions like Holy Knight or Hero might make sense. But Toro has increased proficiency in unrelated areas like blacksmith, woodworker, and alchemist, and he has never seen such a pattern in his life. Toro couldn't believe that even the Prime Minister, likely the best appraiser in the capital, couldn't figure it out. However, he smiles and tells himself that there is no need to despair because his proficiency is increasing across multiple fields. He thinks that God must have given him a truly unique skill and that the only challenge is the difficult conditions for unlocking abilities. But as always, he'll just keep working hard and take it easy. Duke Valiera excitedly tells him that he seems to possess a rare skill and nothing suspicious, so all should be fine, reminding Toro that Duke Valiera mentioned evaluating him on behalf of someone else. Duke Valiera then reveals that he wants Toro to take on the role of a tutor for His Highness. The prince insists on it, so Toro should tutor him once a week and, on other days, teach the nobles and people there. Toro is shocked when he realizes that the Duke just mentioned the prince, royalty, making him dizzy as he wonders if reversi was becoming a noble's pastime instead of just common folks' entertainment. Duke Valiera assures him not to worry as he will be compensated appropriately, but Toro knows that isn't the issue. Later, outside the mansion, Mina is happy while Toro is exhausted. He notices her high spirits and realizes he just blends into the background when surrounded by nobles. She praises him for doing good work, and he thanks her. She then asks if it's true that he'll be tutoring the prince next, making him look at her, unsure if she's joking or serious. He exhaustively replies that he'd rather forget about it for now. A few minutes later, they return to the luxurious hotel, and a maid welcomes him back. The maid asks if she should prepare his meal or if he would like to bathe first. He is amazed by the greeting but shakes his head, reminding himself to stay calm. He then asks Mina what she would like to do, and she replies that they can have dinner first and then take a bath. He suggests eating in the room and relaxing, to which she agrees. He tells the maid to prepare their meals in the room, and the maid respectfully replies that she will, as he wishes. The maid then rushes to inform the others that Toro and Mina will be served in their room and that they'll also start preparing the bath. Mina teasingly tells him that he is like a noble now, and he playfully responds that if he is a noble, she should call him Sadu-sama. The next day, which is his rest day, they are eating breakfast when Mina asks if there is anything he'd like to do since they are in the capital. He thinks about his meeting with the prince tomorrow and decides he wants to relax today, though it means Mina can't wander around either. He then suggests they explore the capital, and she agrees, saying it sounds good. Later, while walking in the streets, he asks Mina if there is anything she needs. She stops by a nearby store and replies that she wants to buy souvenirs for her family and little brother, but they still have time during their stay. He asks her if she has a brother, and she replies yes, telling him that he is the same age as Toro and is a fan of his. Her brother always talks about adventures like his, especially after watching the puppet shows, making Toro feel both shy and surprised. Mina also tells him that her little brother even reenacts the scene where he chased away the debt collectors with copper coins, shocking him that the story spread so widely. He feels embarrassed every time he remembers it because it was so cringy. Mina then points to the side and suggests they go over there. He asks where they are going, and she replies that it is just nearby. They arrive at the Leviter magic shop, which amazes him. When they open the door, an employee welcomes them. He approaches one of the items and sees that it is a magic storage backpack. The staff member tells him that it is one of their proud products, made by the famous magical artisan Gene Fellow. It is a unique item priced at 10 platinum coins. He knows that 1 platinum coin is 100 million in his world, so 10 of them means a billion yen, which shocks him. However, he realizes that the item itself is more important, and he wants it because magic storage is a staple in fantasy. Mina then tells the staff that she doesn't need a big one and asks if they have smaller ones. He asks Mina if she is buying it, and she replies that she is just looking and wants to know the price, performance, and design. The staff member sighs and tells them to come upstairs for more options. They walk upstairs and see a swarm of magic items. Mina laughingly points at the items while looking at him, which confuses him. Then she puts on magic glasses and holds a magic wand, causing the staff to panic and whisper not to touch them. After enjoying the magic items, he asks her if they should head back without buying anything, making the staff sigh and whisper that he knew it. However, the staff is glad that they finally left. Outside, they laugh hard, and he tells her that she was so bold. She reminds him that he had fun in the second half. The next day, in the royal carriage, he steps out and is stunned when he sees the royal mansion in front of him. When the butler of the royal family saw them, he announced their arrival and gracefully welcomed them along with the head maids, making Toro feel even more nervous. He had been briefed about what to expect at the castle by the butler, whom he decided to call Sebi for now since he didn't know his name. Sebi pointed the way and told him to follow. The gate opened, and they followed Sebi inside while the knights surrounded them, gracefully welcoming them. Sebi then informed him that from there on, his attendants should refrain from following and directed them to the waiting room. Sebi ordered the man next to him to guide them, and Toro waved goodbye to Mina, telling her that he would see her later, to which she replied she understood. Sebi led the way, and soon they arrived at the prince's room door. Toro worriedly told himself that he should do this. He sighed and excused himself to the prince, introducing himself as Toro and explaining that he was there to teach reversing. The prince told him to come in, so he pushed the door open and saw the fifth prince, Flu. He noticed Flu's pointed ears, indicating that Flu was an elf, but Flu was not quite what he expected. Flu disappointedly remarked that Toro was really just a kid and questioned if a child like him could really teach him. Toro respectfully replied that he was the foremost disciple of the developer mode, so his skills were adequate. Flu, however, commented that Toro looked younger than him, making Toro annoyed as Flu was judging by appearance and trying to assert dominance. Flu then pointed to the table where the limited edition Reversi set was and told him they should start the lesson. Toro replied that he looked forward to it. They began to play and had a few more rounds, but Flu panicked because he kept losing. Toro thought that crushing Flu completely might be a little immature of him, but he guessed it was okay since he was just a kid to Flu. When he won again, Flu was furious, grabbed the Reversi set, and threw it in the air in tears. Flu then shouted and cried, admitting that Toro was too strong and that he had hardly ever lost before. Flu asked what trick Toro used while grabbing his collar. Toro knew that it wasn't cheating, but he also knew that he couldn't make the prince cry. So, he replied that he would teach him but asked him to let go first. Flu did and sat back down in his chair. Toro stood up and seriously told Flu that the truth was there were tricks to the game and asked if he was prepared for rigorous training. Flu confidently replied yes. Toro then creepily told Flu that he would teach him the ultimate techniques of reversing. A moment later, after teaching a few advanced tricks, Flu asked him if he used those methods to beat Prime Minister Valera, to which he agreed. Flu thanked him for it and admitted that he was a good teacher, to which Toro awkwardly replied with a laugh. Flu then said that at first, he couldn't believe the Prime Minister lost to Toro, but now he understood there were such techniques. This made Toro wonder if Duke Valera didn't hold back against the prince and realized that the Duke showed no mercy, even towards kids. Suddenly, Flu softly grabbed his hand and told him that he wanted to win against Valera, so he should teach him how. Toro agreed, and they both became determined to do it. He sighed in relief, thinking it might go badly at first. But Flu wasn't a bad guy. From then on, the prince's Reversi training began. It was supposed to be weekly but quickly increased to 3 times a week. With Toro's intensive guidance, the prince's skill improved rapidly. Later, back at his accommodation, the innkeeper apologizes for the intrusion and asks if the carriage outside is the royal carriage, to which Toro awkwardly replies yes. The innkeeper sweats profusely and jumps out of the stairs, then bows in front of him, crying and apologizing. The innkeeper begs him to immediately upgrade to the highest grade royal presidential suite room, which horrifies them both. The innkeeper tells him he'll have access to their finest full-course meals, a passionate night with dancers, adventures like valley bungee jumping, and a jungle cruise with rare animals. The innkeeper, still in a panic, also tells him to let them know whatever he needs, with a forced smile. Toro stutteringly replies okay, but thinks that level of accommodation is too much and feels very uncomfortable. Later, in the accommodation near the castle, Mina tells him that they had to change their lodging and that the innkeeper looked pretty sad. He replies that the staff was way too conspicuous and he felt bad for them. But he couldn't refuse that kind of approach. Sebi then greets them. He apologizes for asking him to arrange lodging near the castle, acknowledging that it must have been a tall order. Sebi replies that it was not because Toro was the prince's valuable instructor, and everything had been arranged through Garfish traders. Toro smiles, confirming that Sebi is so capable, and thanks him using his real name gracefully. Then he realizes he said his made-up name, making the moment awkward. Sebi is shocked and nervous, but then tells Toro that he didn't recall introducing himself by name, making Toro wonder if the butler's name was really Sebi. The next day, Toro stood behind Flu, who was facing Duke Valera, with a lot of nobles watching him. The Duke thought for a moment and smiled while Flu waited nervously. Then, Duke Valera raised both his hands and declared that he yielded. making Flu look at him with happy tears. They both cheered for the victory. After the match, they talk happily, and Duke Valiera said that thanks to Toro's guidance over the past month, Prince Flu had truly become stronger. Flu shook his hand continuously, happily admitting that it was all thanks to Toro that he was able to defeat Duke Valiera, and he thanked him. Flu then asked if he could call him just Toro, to which Toro agreed. In return, Flu told him to call him just Flu, which Toro respectfully acknowledged but still called him Prince Flu. Flu told him to drop the Prince part, but Toro replied that it might be a bit difficult. Suddenly, Toro heard the voice activating his special skill, announcing that he had befriended someone of high elf lineage, thus acquiring spirit magic, fire, water, earth, wind, lightning, light, and dark. This surprised him. Then, the voice activated his special skill again while Flu was walking away, confirming that he had befriended royalty and thus acquired the skill of authority. Toro was happy yet couldn't believe that he had learned 2 new skills from that event. Duke Valiera then asked if he could have a moment with Toro, to which he agreed. The Duke mentioned the investigation into the Garbled Text skill they had discussed earlier, and they began talking about it. After months, Toro's contract as a tutor in the royal capital ended, and he was finally freed from those tense days of reversing. He was excited that he could finally relax, but he knew that in another world, spirit magic would be the ultimate skill to have. When he lit his magic fire, he noticed it was as small as a lighter flame, and his water magic produced just enough water to avoid thirst, indicating that they were all at a life magic level. However, he felt relaxed, knowing that with continued use, his proficiency would improve. The real issue for him was authority, and he wondered if there was any use for it for someone like him, a commoner. He then remembered that he even made a kid cry the other day. Someone called him from outside, and Mina opened his room door, asking if he was ready. He replied absolutely and suggested they go buy lots of souvenirs while showing the bag full of coins. Before that, Sebi thanked him for everything and gave him the bag of coins, explaining that it was a token of appreciation from Prince Flu and Duke Valiera, which Toro accepted. He whispered to Mina that it felt a bit light, and she replied that she didn't know. Sebi told him that Prince Flu felt it was embarrassing to express gratitude with money but insisted he accept it. When they opened the bag, they were both shocked to see 20 platinum coins, equivalent to 200 million yen in his past world. Back in the present, they are back at the Leviter magic shop, and he remembers how annoyed he was by the staff's attitude last time, deciding not to buy anything after browsing. As they walk inside, the staff welcomes them, but when they see them, they sigh, wondering if they are there to prank them again. He points to the magic bag and tells the staff that he'd like to buy it. The staff reminds him that, as mentioned before, the cost is 10 platinum coins. Toro shows his bag of coins to the staff and confidently tells them that he'll buy it. The staff stares at his side, and the second staff member gives the first one a thumbs up. The second staff member opens the magic bag case and hands the magic bag to the first staff member, thinking that many say they'll buy it and then steal it after disabling the security magic. The first staff member guesses they are one of the thieves too, but when Toro gives the coins and tells the staff that he'll pay right away, all the staff are shocked and shout, asking where such a young kid got all that money. He then points to the small magic storage pouch and tells the staff that he'll get it too, so they should give him a discount. Mina reminds him that he wasn't planning on buying it, and he replies that it is part of his special bonus. She tries to disagree, saying it is still 1 platinum coin and she couldn't take it, but he insists, telling her that she has worked hard with him for a month and he wants to do at least that much for her. She thanks him and accepts it as her reward without reservations. Suddenly, the voice tells him that his special skill condition is confirmed. It is magic storage for those who have money to spend, so he has acquired magic storage, making him shocked. He sighs disappointedly, making Mina panic and suggests maybe they shouldn't get it. He whispers to her that it is not why he sighed, it is because he had just gained the magic storage ability from the voice of the world, making them both incredulous. A moment later, they are back on the street, and he is buying a lot of things, thinking that now that he has magic storage, he wants to buy as much as he can while his money lasts. He buys herbs, armor, books, paints, and a lot of different things. She asks if they are buying too much, and he replies that they did. But it was a lifetime's worth of shopping, and they are all things he needs, so it is fine. As he notices someone on the side and is about to pass the lady, she creepily calls him and tells him that she senses the vibration of a different world from him, stopping him in his tracks in shock. Then, the day to return to Seisi arrived. Just a few days after his contract as a reversing instructor was settled, they packed their things and loaded them into the carriage. Toro was busy thinking about everything that had happened and what lay ahead as they headed back to Seisi, especially considering Garfish's recent proposition. The previous day, Garfish had asked him if they could perhaps establish a reversing manufacturing base in the royal capital. Toro thought it was an appealing offer but also had to consider the sales in Seisi. He asked Garfish if they could possibly have some luxury and limited edition boards made in the capital, suggesting that there must be plenty of top-notch craftsmen there. Garfish agreed, noting that the nobles in the capital would definitely have a demand for limited editions. They shook hands, with Garfish looking forward to working with him. Then there were the fortune teller's words. Toro gave the small magic storage bag to Garfish, who asked if he was really sure, feeling bad about accepting it. Toro assured him it was fine, knowing he couldn't exactly tell him it was an extra and that Mina had turned it down. He told Garfish he would rather offer it at a discount to him after being in his care during the trip. Garfish, who had been eyeing the bag himself, protested that offering such an expensive item at a 60% discount was outrageous and suggested a 30% discount instead. Toro insisted it was okay and expressed his hope for a good relationship with Garfish and Mo, the developer, in the future. The truth was he hoped for their future collaborations. They then walked back to meet his Sassy Adventurers members while Garfish watched him, thinking that Toro had no greed. Garfish accepted the magic storage bag, making Toro glad, hoping it served as a decent gesture. Garfish then assured him that the sales of Reversi would always be in the capable hands of Garfish traders. As they were getting into the carriage, Toro waved goodbye to Garfish, thanked him, and told him it had been a pleasure working with him. They began their journey back to Sassy, with Toro feeling that his journey had been long yet short. He guessed it was a goodbye to the capital and wondered how everyone in Sassy was doing, making him eager to see them again. While they are on the road, Paulo tells him that magic storage is truly amazing because it can fit all that cargo into such a small bag, helping cut down on carriage costs. Toro reflects on the capital, Reversi, magic storage, and traveling with a party of adventurers, realizing that he is living the dream life in another world, or so he is supposed to. The fortune teller's words still bother him, as do the same words mentioned by Prime Minister Valiera. Mina interrupts his thoughts, warning him that it is not time to daydream because bandits have been spotted on the highways again. He asks if they are the same bandits they encountered on their way there, but she replies that she is not sure of the details, but it is better to be cautious. She then tells him that the Adventurers Guild in each town might be collaborating on bounties or scouting missions. He hopes that Leo, Nay, Mo, and everyone else are safe and thinks that it'd be nice if nothing happened. Later, when they are back in Sassy after so long, the town's vibrancy easily sweeps away any worries. Paulo cheerfully shouts to everyone that they are back in Sassy. Mina tells Toro that it turned out to be nothing in the end, and he tells her that it was all thanks to her intimidating glare, making her ask if it was supposed to be a compliment. She then waves goodbye, telling him that she has to report back to the guild, so she'll head off first. He agrees and waves goodbye to her. Paulo then tells him that he'd like to discuss the limited edition Reversi boards at the office, but Nay cuts Paulo off and sweetly welcomes Toro back. Nay worriedly asks him how the capital was, if he was okay, if he managed to teach the nobles properly, and notices that he bought leather. He tells her to relax and assures her that he'll tell her everything once they get back to the guild. Nay sighs with relief, admitting that she got a bit carried away but is glad to see him looking well. She waves goodbye, telling him that she'll see him later. Toro is glad that nothing has changed and he is back in Sassy, his beloved town. And so, Toro's return to Sassy was a busy one. The limited edition Reversi boards were left to the craftsmen in the capital, but Paulo suggested that Toro himself should create a one-of-a-kind piece of added value. Under the agreement, it would be made without revealing Toro's name, using the pseudonym Gyro Sugar for the stamp. Of the original 5 limited edition Reversi boards, 3 were sent to Prince Flu, Prime Minister Valiera, and Count Sassy, while the remaining 2 were given to Garfish. Unknowingly, these would later become known as the legendary Sugar Brand Reversi boards. Months passed by, and Toro was at the guild quest board, carefully looking at the quests. When he found one, he approached Nay. She saw that it was a goblin extermination quest and was amazed that he had finally reached E rank, which he confidently confirmed. She worriedly asked him if he was okay going solo. He replied that he was a bit anxious, but he needed to get used to new quests. She sighed in understanding but brightly told him not to push himself too hard. A moment later, he was in goblin territory and noticed that the place had a creepy vibe. He knew that he used to run away all the time, but now it was different. He activated his presence detection and stealth cloak. Seeing 2 goblins nearby, he positioned himself for a surprise attack. He grabbed his bow and arrow, aimed at the goblins, and released the first arrow, which directly hit one of the goblins in the back. He then drew his sword for the next goblin, jumped off the tree with the sword in front, and successfully pierced the goblin. He sighed in relief, thinking he had completely succeeded. But then he shivered in fear when he felt a presence behind him. Before that, he was busy collecting the goblin ears and their magic stones to complete the quest. He looked around when he felt a presence behind him, wondering if the noise had attracted more goblins. He was shocked when he saw more goblins launching an attack from behind. Fortunately, he dodged their attacks in time and blocked the close attack with his bow. However, one of the goblins managed to hit him slightly, causing him to kneel on the ground in pain, realizing it was too soon for him to face them alone. He wondered if he should run away, but decided not to, thinking there was another way. When one of the goblins got closer, he knew it was all or nothing. The goblin launched its knife at him, and in that moment, a symbol lit up on his forehead. Using his authority skill, he was able to make the goblins stop in their tracks. Seizing the opportunity, he immediately slashed the 2 goblins in front of him with his sword and took their magic stones out. He then drew his bow and arrow and shot the last one from behind. Exhausted, he kneeled on the ground, knowing that if he hadn't remembered his authority skill, he would have been in trouble. Despite the pain in his body, he was glad he managed it alone. But he knew he needed to become stronger. A moment later, he was back at the guild. When they saw him all beat up, she worriedly asked what had happened and panicked when he didn't answer. She put her hand on his head, patting him while asking if he was okay and if he had any injuries, making him shy. The other adventurers wished they were him. She then told him it was good he was safe and that he even completed the quest. Leo praised him, saying he didn't think Toro would manage that much and that maybe his skills were pretty amazing after after all. Toro humbly replied that he was just lucky and that when it comes to battles, he is still far from a seasoned adventurer. Leo patted his head and told him that adventurers sometimes grow with luck on their side and that every step is important. They then approached him and told him there was a letter for him. He saw that it was from Count Seisi, making him wonder what it could be. Later, at Count Seisi's mansion, the Count arrogantly asked if he was Terus Sadu, to which he replied yes. Count Seisi scrutinized him with a look that made Toro feel uncomfortable. Count Seisi then told him that there was only one reason he called him there today. He wanted him to be his reversey mentor. Among the nobility in the capital, not a soul was unfamiliar with Toro's name, renowned as a reversey master. The Count also mentioned that he heard Toro was close with the 5th Prince and the Prime Minister, and that he lived within his territory, which he hadn't known prior. He thought of meeting Toro in person, to which Toro replied that he understood and noticed that Count Seisi didn't necessarily give off bad vibes. Count Seisi then asks if he will accept the role of reversey mentor, and Toro replies that he would start right away, thinking it is better not to refuse and avoid any issues. He begins to tutor Count Seisi and thinks that it seems like a good start, which means he should be fine for now. The next morning, Leo calls every adventurer in their guild to gather around, causing confusion about what is happening so early in the morning. Toro asks Nei what is going on, and she replies that a quest came down from the capital to all guild branches. He tells her it sounds like a big deal and asks what it is about. She replies that it is a quest to subdue highway bandits, making him wonder if it is the same ones they encountered on their way to the capital. Leo then calls him and orders him to come on stage, announcing that their guild has decided to join the bandit extermination quest. First, they'll send out a scouting team, comprising 3 teams of 3. Cheek, an E-rank adventurer with merchant skills, introduces himself to Toro and tells him to leave the negotiations to him. The leader, a D-rank adventurer with thief skills, introduces himself as Qzort. Toro shakes their hands, introducing himself as Toro, and thinks it is a temporary team but one he has always wanted. Qzort asks if he has the presence detection skill, which Toro confirms, wondering how Qzort knew about it. Qzort then suggests they hold a strategy meeting. During the meeting, Qzort explains that they will gather information by visiting villages where bandit sightings have been reported, using Cheek's negotiation skills and Toro's presence detection. Once they narrow down the location, they'll use Qzort's scouting skills to thoroughly search for the bandit's base. The strategy meeting with Qzort and Cheek goes smoothly, and when Qzort tells them to get ready and depart the next morning, they both agree. It is Toro's first team action, and they are counting on him, so he thinks they must make the operation a success. 3 days later, a man stops 3 hooded figures and asks who they are. Cheek replies that they got lost after chasing down some monsters and asks if they could take shelter from the rain. He tells Qzort that the villagers are unusually wary, so Qzort shows a money bag, telling the man they won't stay for free and that they have the means to pay. The man thinks for a moment and agrees, warning them not to go into the village and that they can stay by the eaves of the shed. Suddenly, someone appears, calling the man Bird and asking about the strangers. He reminds Burn not to do anything rash. Toro is surprised when he recognizes the man's voice and sees that it is his father, drunk. He couldn't believe it. Staring at the man, he confirms that it is indeed his father. Toro wonders why his father would bring such outsiders to a village that isn't welcoming, and he gets a bad feeling about it. He whispers to Qzort that his father is there, and Qzort asks if it's the one who treated him badly. Toro whisperingly replies yes while fixing his hood as his father looks at him. A moment later, Cheek asks Qzort if the village seems suspicious, and Qzort agrees, suggesting they head back for now. Cheek then calls Burn and tells him that it doesn't look like the rain will stop anytime soon, so they have decided to give up for today. Cheek asks Burn if they can possibly get a discount on their refuge fee, and reminds Burn that it gets dangerous with the monsters after dark. Burn, pissed, asks Cheek if he is trying to bargain. Cheek apologizes and gives Burn 3 silver coins for the 3 of them. Burn, smiling, tells Cheek that it can't be helped and they should settle on it. The village's atmosphere, the villagers' attitudes, and Toro's father, Hawk, being sheltered there ensure them that the village is the hideout of the bandit group they have been searching for. As they run through the forest, Toro tells them he was worried they'd be discovered when they started haggling for the refuge fee. Cheek explains that paying up front would have made them look more suspicious, and being generous like that would put the villagers in a good mood and keep them from reporting them. Both Toro and Qzort understand and think that Cheek is good at negotiating. A moment later, men on horses start looking for them. Qzort feels something and tells them that his sleuth has detected the presence of enemies coming after them. Cheek replies that they noticed them quicker than he thought and asks Toro if it was really his father. Toro confirms it, saying there is no mistake about it. He then sees a horse behind him with a man determined to catch them. Qzort notices that the man is on high alert and tells them that his father may have reported them. Qzort turns Cheek's head around and tells them that they need to get back to Seisi. While running to escape, Qzort explains that taking the main road might make them too conspicuous and get them surrounded. If they can make it through the forest and over the mountains by night, they should be able to shake off the pursuers. The information about the bandit hideout that the 3 had uncovered was quickly sent via a fast horse to the surrounding areas, leading to a large-scale extermination quest by the combined guild branches in each region. The Seisi branch was also bustling with preparations. During a meeting, Toro told Leo to let him join in since his father was involved, knowing that he couldn't cause any more trouble for everyone. Leo stared at him for a moment and sighed before agreeing. Toro's first large-scale quest was about to begin. On the day of the bandit extermination, before dawn, adventurers gathered one after another. Roy told him that the place in front of them was definitely the village, which Toro agreed with. Roy then began to explain the plan. They would split into 2 squads to assault the fortress from the back, prioritizing securing it and rescuing any hostages. The remaining squad would raise the village on a signal to catch the bandits off guard and take them down. During their search, due to the rain, Toro and his team hadn't noticed that the village was surrounded by fences and had watchtowers like a fortress. Toro was placed in the forest assault team due to his skill in archery and ability to hide his presence. He nervously knew they needed to take down the lookout first. When he got closer, he aimed his arrow at the man in the fortress and successfully hit him. As the man fell to the ground dead, Roy signaled the others to move, and they all followed. Despite his hands shaking, Toro stopped it, thinking that even though they were bandits, it was his first time assaulting somebody. Roy approached him and told him not to back down now. Toro assured Roy that he was fine, knowing he must focus on the quest today. On the other side, one of their members then jumped on the fence and successfully stabbed the man guarding it. He raised his hand, signaling that it was done. On Toro's side, Toro noticed the adventurer struggling to climb the fence. Without hesitation, Toro accessed his magic storage and made the fence disappear. His teammates stood in utter shock, unable to believe what had just happened. The bandits' boss panicked when he saw the adventurers inside their territory and shouted, asking how they had invaded so easily. On the other hand, Mina was surrounded by bandits who teasingly told her to prepare herself. She effortlessly swung her sword, slashing and pushing them back. She was then surprised when fire attacked the bandits around her. She saw that it was the cat lady casting a fire spell to attack the bandits from a distance. Whisker told the cat lady that it should demoralize the enemy. On the other side, Toro ran out of arrows, so he decided to use his spirit magic, Earth, and attacked the bandits from behind with stones, completely preventing his team from being hit thanks to his precision skill. The bandits' boss shouted to his men that they had the numbers, so they should surround the adventurers and take them down, not noticing Roy behind them. When the second-in-command was about to tell the bandits' boss that the fortress had been taken, Roy hit the man from behind, using the back of his sword. The boss turned to face them, confidently telling them not to underestimate him and boasting about his swordsmanship. However, Toro activated his spirit magic, Dark, and threw it on the boss's face, blinding him. Mina then kicked the boss hard in the face, making him collapse to the ground. Mina and Roy gave Toro a thumbs up, praising him for the nice follow-up. Toro waved at them and gave a peace sign in response. A moment later, when everything was over and the bandits were arrested, Mina thanked him for saving them, and he was glad he managed to help. Thus, Toro's quest to subdue the bandits was successfully completed. After that, Toro's skills were recognized, and he became active in temporary teams. During that time, he had been receiving letters from the Baron of Seisi, offering to take him into service, but he continued to refuse, valuing his life as an adventurer. One day, a knight slammed the Adventurers Guild door open, unrolled a long scroll, and asked if Terus Sadu was there by order of the Baron of Seisi. Roy angrily told the knight that they couldn't just barge in there, but the knight dismissed him, telling Roy to step aside, which infuriated everyone. Leo asked what was going on, and Toro wondered if it was about him. As Toro's achievements became widely known, Viscount Seisi repeatedly sent messengers inviting him to become a vassal. Leo was infuriated by the Viscount's one-sided attitude and continually declined the offer, insisting Toro was essential to the guild. The Viscount then sent a messenger directly to Toro, tempting him with promises of a lavish lifestyle. Toro respectfully responded that he wished to continue his life as an adventurer, humbly declining the offer. The messenger furiously took his coat and told Toro he would regret wasting the Viscount's generosity, making Toro think it was turning into a hassle and hope that nothing would come of it. Leo asked how things had come to this, making Toro feel worried. The head knight stepped forward and told Leo that the Lord had heard about the rumored young adventurer who was unhappy with his terms, felt insulted, and became furious. Leo asked the head knight if he said rumored, to which the head knight replied yes and explained that Viscount Seisi was annoyed to hear rumors of an adventurer more popular than himself in the city. Moreover, the messenger claimed that Toro insulted him, leading to this uproar. Toro was confused because he knew he had declined politely. Leo, noticing Toro's confusion, told the head knight that Toro was not one to insult others and that if they listened to what was actually said, they'd know Toro was not that kind of person. The head knight acknowledged Leo's point but explained that Viscount Seisi didn't listen. Leo then told the head knight that he would speak to the Lord himself, so they should leave before the situation escalated. When the head knight looked back, they saw people rallying outside for Toro's sake. The head knight then respectfully told Leo that he understood and they would take their leave. They walked out of the guild, making Toro hope that it would settle the issue. Despite Toro's worries, the commotion spread throughout the city. The citizens knew of Toro's good deeds. His role in subduing thieves had even been turned into a puppet show, earning the people's favor. However, there were also those who viewed his achievements with disdain, causing a rift in the city of Seisi. Toro was thinking that it had become a bigger issue than he thought when Nei noticed him and told him not to worry because the rumors would die down soon since they were baseless. Roy then approached him, telling him that everyone knew he was a good guy, which the other adventurers agreed with, saying not to let it get to him. They mentioned that their kids were fans of his and that only a few believed such rumors, making him teary-eyed. He thanked everyone from the bottom of his heart. Several days later, one morning, the knight once more arrived at the door of their guild. The head knight walked inside holding a scroll, making everyone pissed and wondering what it was this time. Toro asked Nei if something was wrong, and Nei told him not to go outside. However, the head knight shouted that Toro was suspected of being part of a band of thieves and there was a warrant for his arrest, so he must come with them without resistance, showing a scroll to everyone. Toro was shocked to hear he had a warrant for his arrest, and everyone was confused. Leo clenched his teeth in anger and shouted that it was nonsense, but the men immediately grabbed him and told him to calm down. Leo furiously faced the head knight, who simply stated that resistance would not be tolerated and anyone who interfered would also be arrested. Roy shouted to Leo, asking who would help Toro if Leo got arrested too, making Leo calm down. The head knight then demanded they hand over Toro quietly, making Toro realize that it had gone too far. He handed his sword to Nae, asking her if he could entrust her with it while he was gone. She accepted it, and he walked away, thinking he couldn't trouble everyone at the guild anymore. The head knight then told him he was under arrest and put handcuffs on his hands. They dragged him away, and Leo shouted to him not to worry because the guild would do everything they could to support him. Nae cried as she tried to approach him, and the others felt hopeless. The guild door then slammed shut. Later, Toro was beaten up during an interrogation. The interrogator asked if his father was a thief. Toro replied that he had been living at the guild as an adventurer before he knew about his father being a thief, and he only found out during a subjugation quest. The man slammed his hand on the table and grabbed Toro's head, shouting that his father had escaped arrest and accusing Toro of helping his father flee. Toro explained that he was busy fighting alongside other adventurers at that time and had no time to pass on information. The man slapped him and shouted for him to be silent. After the beatings and interrogations, Toro was left in a cell, severely beaten up and wondering what he should do. His magic was sealed, meaning he couldn't even use magic storage, but he was sure that Leo, Nae, and everyone at the guild would come to help him. He believed in them and endured the ordeal. In the royal capital, 2 weeks since Toro's arrest, Garfish was sitting but couldn't hide his panic and worries. Duke Valiera entered the room and asked Garfish what brought him there so suddenly, reminding him that he was quite busy and to make it quick. Garfish worriedly told Duke Valiera that he needed to talk to him about Toro, making the Duke confused and asking what had happened to Toro. The Duke then ordered Garfish to tell him more about it carefully. After Garfish explains everything that happened to Toro, Duke Valiera nods and replies that he understands. Garfish assumes the Duke can save Toro, but the Duke tells him to wait and thinks they have no choice but to involve His Majesty in the matter. This shocks Garfish, who begs the Duke to request it at once. The Duke explains that it is not that simple because matters within a domain should ideally be resolved within it. Additionally, there are factions among the nobility, and Viscount Sacy is part of Marquis Haragura's faction. Garfish asks if that means they are a faction opposed to the Duke, and the Duke replies yes. He then tells Garfish that many nobles enjoy reversing, so they should gather them to write a petition. They will also ask the Queen for her persuasion and involve Prince Flu as well, which surprises Garfish. And so, a young boy's arrest turned into a major affair that mobilized the nobility, and now threatened to shake the very foundations of power. When Prince Flu hears the news about Toro, he thinks it is absurd. Sebi tells him that he understands how he feels, but it is quite unprecedented to advise the king directly, bypassing his brothers. Flu knows that Sebi is right, so he decides to meet with his brothers first and ask his mother for her help as well. Prince Flu and Sebi then agree on their plan. Thus, the prince's legendary reversey match with the Prime Minister and the involvement of Toro, the young instructor, became the talk of the palace. Soon, the king himself took action. On the other hand, Toro was still in prison, feeling hopeless. When the food arrived, he saw that it was moldy bread and dirty soup. Yet, he rushed to it in hunger and bit into it, but then he felt paralyzed and realized it was poison. He wondered if he should have admitted to the crime. Yet, the voice told him that the special skill condition was confirmed and it was he who endured every hardship. He acquired status ailment resistance and status ailment recovery, making him incredulous that the voice of the world would save him there. He wondered if it was the destiny the fortune teller spoke of. He then remembered the fortune teller telling him that she sensed the world's vibrations from him. Moreover, from his fortune, she felt the essence that heroes bear, and he was led by destiny to save that world. He looked at Mina, confused, and then the fortune teller told him that his skills would prove most useful, so he should be diligent in his efforts. Back then, he thought it was far-fetched, but now he guessed maybe the time had come. If that was truly his destiny, he shouldn't stay there any longer. Nearly 3 months had passed since Toro was imprisoned, and Viscount Sacy knelt in front of the king, expressing that it was a great honor to be summoned and telling the king that his radiant mood graced them all. The king addressed Viscount Sacy, trusting that he was aware of why he had been called, making the Viscount sweat in fear and stutteringly reply that he was afraid he did not know. The king informed him that rumors claimed he had imprisoned an innocent boy, the reversey tutor, under false charges. Viscount Sacy panicked upon hearing this, and the king continued, saying that he had received numerous pleas for Toro's release, causing distress. The king then tapped his finger on his chair and asked what the Viscount had to say about it. Viscount Sacy shook in fear and couldn't answer, but then the king told him that while it was his domain and how he governed his people within the law was his concern, he could not turn a deaf ear to such an outcry for the innocent. The Viscount wiped the sweat of fear from his face and stutteringly replied that he had come to realize Toro's innocence, and had already begun the release procedures. He then bowed his head to the floor and apologized to the king for the concern and trouble caused. Everyone present knew that the arrest was a unilateral decision by the count and recognized his desperate lie. Yet, the king loudly declared that Toro's innocence was confirmed and that he was relieved to hear it from the Viscount. The king then told him he could leave, to which Viscount Sacy replied affirmatively and walked away in fear. The king then asked Duke Gredo Valiera if it satisfied him, and Duke Valiera replied that he merely voiced his concern and that no issue remained with the count. Prince Flu thanked his father for his intervention, ending the saga of Toro's arrest, which had even involved the king. The next day, in the Adventurers Guild Sacy branch, adventurers read in the newspaper that Toro had been released, and they all cheered inside without knowing that he was standing in front of the guild. He then opened the door. The adventurers rushed to meet him, and he told them that he was back. Nea was in tears when she saw him, beaten up and full of wounds. She approached him and hugged him tightly, crying as she welcomed him back home. The Baron of Sacy's tyranny was criticized not just by the Adventurers Guild but also by the commercial guilds, including Garfish traders. However, as the opponent was a feudal lord, public reactions were muted. The doctor then healed Toro's inner injuries and told him that he would need to rest for a while. Toro replied that he was just happy he could sleep in a fluffy bed, making Nea heartbroken as she worriedly looked at him. Leo hit his head gently and told him that if he could joke, he was okay. He then called Nea, who was crying because of Toro's situation, while Leo was relieved that he was fine. Toro steadily recovered and got back to sword training. The voice then told him that he had confirmed a condition of recovery from the brink of death and had acquired the super regeneration skill. He was amazed to get it and thought that he had learned something pretty amazing. He also thought that it was about time to do what he had been meaning to do for Sacy, and repay the favor by making that special food. A moment later, he was back in the guild and in the kitchen with Leo and Nea. Leo looked at the swarm of ingredients on the table and remarked that Toro had bought quite a lot again, and they were all things that could only be found in the capital. Nea then asked him what he planned to make with all those ingredients. He replied that when he was in the capital, he thought of adding a new menu item to the Relaxing Inn, something he really wanted to eat and something he wanted everyone to try. Leo and Nea looked at each other, confused, and both asked what it was. He replied that it was curry rice. He explained that it was a magical dish that could enchant anybody. Nea asked him how he made it, and he thought for a moment before replying that he recalled having eaten it but was not so sure about the combination of spices. A month passed, and the creation of curry powder proved to be an unimaginable challenge. The kitchen was filled with the unique smell of spices to the point of receiving complaints. After much sweat, tears, and runny noses, he finally did it. He made a curry rice meal, which once again added to his unique menu with the name of curry rice. After discussions between the innkeeper of the Relaxing Inn and the owners of the tavern across the street, it was decided that Toro would fund the renovations to transform the tavern into a curry specialty restaurant. Once the renovations were complete, the restaurant opened to the public. While eating together, Nea noticed a swarm of people entering the restaurant and told Toro that it was a huge hit. However, Leo reminded Toro that starting over from G rank was unavoidable due to the rules. Toro reassured Leo not to worry, acknowledging that he couldn't take on quests for over 5 months. Nea asked Toro if it was okay for him to only register as Toro. He replied yes, explaining that he still felt reluctant to use his father's surname, which was associated with the remaining bandits and was already widely known among the nobility and the royal family. Besides, he wanted to try living as just Toro. Nea agreed, telling him that he had already made up his mind about it. He smiled and nodded, wanting to be just Toro and nothing else. Toro then opened a discussion with Leo about the margin of the Relaxing Inn. Leo explained that they had discussed taking over the rights to the inn's earnings. Leo asked Toro if he was really okay with it. Toro replied yes, explaining that he would need the money for moving. Leo was silent for a moment before telling Toro that if he was okay with it, they would buy it. However, the curry shop was not for sale because it was something Toro had built from the ground up. They would handle the management, but Toro would keep the rights and have access to the shop's funds from any guild location. This made Toro touched and teary-eyed. He bowed to Leo, thanking him so much for it. Leo patted his head and told him there was no need for thanks, asking if he remembered what he said when they first met. Later, a grand farewell party was held at the Adventurers Guild before Toro left. Nea cried as she hugged him, telling him not to forget about them. When the time to depart arrived, Nea asked if he had everything, and he replied that he was good. Leo asked if he would also be saying his goodbyes in the capital, to which Toro replied yes. Leo wished him safe travels, and Nea, still teary, told him to take care, though she was sure he would be fine. He respectfully bowed to them, truly grateful for everything they had done for him. Mina asked if they should go, and he thanked her for agreeing to escort him to the capital. Toro, who had reincarnated into another world of his own volition, set off on a new adventure guided by fate. After a long journey, they arrived at the royal capital. He thanked Mina for her help, and then he noticed a blue light in front of him. Intrigued, he chased it, weaving through the crowd and the bustling streets. The light eventually stopped in front of a fortune teller. The fortune teller greeted him, saying they met again. She sensed his many questions and he confirmed, expressing his curiosity about his prophecy, and asking where he should go next. The fortune teller cryptically replied with the next place he should visit. Later, he arrived at Dance's village. As he approached, the guard noticed his guild pendant and, with a lazy demeanor, assured him that if the guild vouched for him, he was welcome. The guard also warned him that Dance's village was wary of outsiders and advised him to avoid causing trouble. He nodded and thanked the guard. As he walked inside, he couldn't help but feel nervous due to the gatekeeper's lack of enthusiasm and the cold stares from the villagers. He looked around, recalling that the building with the blue roof was the guild hall. Soon, he spotted it, although it had a large hole in its roof. He entered, causing the receptionist to look at him in confusion. Showing his pendant, he stated his intention to base his activities in the village. The receptionist placed his pendant in a device and instructed him to wait. However, she seemed disappointed upon discovering he was a G-rank novice and directed him to the bulletin board for quests. Realizing this was the worst worst reception he had ever received at an adventurer's guild. He asked the receptionist where he could find an inn. She informed him there was only one, an unnamed inn 2 houses down. He thanked her and soon arrived at the dilapidated inn, wondering if he was at the right place. Inside, the innkeeper asked what he wanted, emphasizing that it wasn't a playground for kids. He took out his storage, requesting a room, and surprised the innkeeper by paying in advance with silver coins for 10 nights. Though amazed by the silver, the innkeeper coldly directed him to his room, the second from the back. Upon entering, he found it messy and dirty, with a broken doorknob. Despite this, he was relieved to have a place to stay. Sitting on the bed, he examined the doorknob, planning to fix it later. He encouraged himself, deciding this would be his base for a while, and planned to take on some quests. Returning to the guild, he saw a repair quest. Knowing he couldn't be picky as a G-rank adventurer, he accepted the quest and set out to explore the village. He then climbed onto the guild's roof. With his woodworking skills from making reversi and his precision skill, the repairs would be a breeze. Activating his precision skill, he started repairing the hole in the roof. Several minutes later, he was finished, leaving the receptionist amazed. As he climbed down, the receptionist asked if his name was Toro and if he had skills in woodworking, as she never expected the repair to be done so beautifully. He simply asked if the quest was clear now. She coldly replied yes and told him to let her complete the paperwork. As she began the paperwork, she mentioned that he had cleared several quests in the past and met the promotion criteria. She informed him that he was now F rank. He thanked her and accepted his new adventurer's pendant. A moment later, he was putting the key in his room door when he felt a glare behind him. Turning around, he saw an adventurer who asked if he was a newcomer. The adventurer introduced himself as Bob and asked if Toro was an adventurer too. Toro replied yes, shaking Bob's hand, and explained that he was more or less an adventurer. Bob expressed his eagerness to work with him and pointed out that his own room was at the back. Bob, an E-rank adventurer, was pleased to hear that Toro had just been promoted to F rank. He offered his help, promising to give advice if needed. Bob then remembered something and mentioned hearing from Chloe, the receptionist, about Toro repairing the guild. He waved goodbye, asking Toro to save him more trouble. Toro smiled, happy to finally meet someone kind, and resolved to give it his all starting tomorrow by taking on F-rank quests. The next day, he arrived at the forest, walking around with his basket. Toro's Eyes of Truth skill was originally for appraising objects. By linking it with his flora knowledge and presence detection skills, he developed an original technique for efficiently gathering herbs while detecting danger. Because of this, he noticed someone being chased by 4 goblins. Rushing to the scene, he was shocked to see it was Bob. Toro shot 2 of the goblins with arrows and activated his authority skill to immobilize the remaining goblins. He then slashed them with his sword. Rushing to Bob's side, he asked if he was okay, but was horrified to see that Bob was poisoned. In a panic, he shouted Bob's name in worry. He knew he had to hurry and told Bob that he was going to treat him immediately. He applied some cream to Bob's wounds and made him drink a potion. Realizing the potion alone might not be enough, he decided to try something he hadn't before, combining it with an anti-poison potion to increase Bob's chances of survival. He then used his status ailment recovery skill to help heal Bob from the inside. Moments later, Bob calmed down, and Toro noticed his breathing had stabilized. Relieved, he knew it would suffice for now. Still, he carried Bob, urging him to hold on a little longer as they headed back to the village. A short while later, they arrived at the village pharmacy. The doctor informed Toro that the timely treatment had saved Bob's life and assured him that Bob would be fine. Toro expressed his relief and asked if Bob could rest there for a while, as the poison had greatly weakened him. The doctor curtly refused, stating he had done what he could and Toro should take Bob and leave. Surprised by the doctor's coldness, Toro remembered the village's overall wariness of outsiders. He helped Bob walk out of the pharmacy, reflecting on the villagers' cold demeanor, and the gatekeeper's warning about the village's mistrust of strangers. They arrived back at the inn, and Toro laid Bob down on the bed. Bob woke up, confused, and asked where they were. Toro explained that they were at the village inn and that he had found Bob unconscious but had treated his wounds and removed the poison, assuring him that he would be fine. Bob understood and apologized for being a burden, but Toro dismissed it, asking if Bob had been on a quest. Bob explained that he had been doing a monster cleanup around the wayside shrine, which confused Toro. He asked if Bob meant the shrine, and Bob confirmed, explaining it was dedicated to the deity worshipped in the village for a long time. But the area had become unsafe lately for various reasons. Bob added that they hadn't held a festival in honor of the deity since the monster population had increased. Toro asked if this was why Bob was doing the monster cleanup. Bob confirmed and mentioned that something seemed suspicious about the shrine. Curious, Toro asked what he meant. Bob, one of the canine folk, explained that he trusted his nose and his instincts, which told him the shrine smelled fishy. He noted that, while faint, the same smell was present in the village, and there was no mistaking it. Toro agreed that the place felt off and asked if Bob thought the shrine was the main point of concern. Bob confirmed, adding that a local once told him how friendly the villagers were, but Toro pointed out that it was the total opposite now. Bob, though saddened, agrees. He explains that he still owes a debt to the people there, and even if it means taking some risks, he wants to solve the mystery of that shrine. Determined, he insists that he can't take the cleanup quest due to his rank, so he should be allowed to assist Bob. Bob, however, warns that it would only increase his debt. Yet, he disagrees, explaining that he is doing it of his own free will and will enter the forest to back him up. Bob agrees and thanks him. Bob then drew his sword and declared that this time, he wouldn't screw up. They headed to the forest where the shrine was located. Toro followed Bob, activating his presence detection skill and stealth cloak as they walked. When he saw a goblin nearby, he wondered if he should let it pass. Peeking back, he saw the goblin was gone and sighed in relief. Continuing to walk, he used his presence detection skill again and felt Bob's presence nearby. However, he also sensed more presences. Emerging from the bush, he was shocked to see a swarm of goblins and a goblin sorcerer. It was his first encounter with a goblin sorcerer. He realized the knife that poisoned Bob was likely the sorcerer's idea. Goblin sorcerers were rare, intelligent, and capable of using magic, making them significant threats. He noticed the place they were gathering around and wondered if it was the shrine Bob mentioned. Seeing the goblins heading inside, he thought the shrine could be very dangerous. Toro debated whether to wait for the goblins to come out, knowing Bob might be on his way. Hearing movement in the bushes, he wondered if he was too late. Bob emerged from the bush, and Toro tried to call him in a whisper, but the goblin sorcerer noticed Bob. Bob shouted at the goblins, accusing them of desecrating the shrine. The goblins rushed at Bob, who fought them with both swords but completely overwhelmed by the goblins. Realizing the situation was dire and too much for one person, Toro saw the sorcerer creating a magic spell. He shouted to Bob to watch out, but Bob was in complete utter shock. Toro quickly released an arrow aimed at the goblin sorcerer, but it was intercepted by a sword. A goblin knight had protected the sorcerer. He shouted to Bob to look behind him, but it was too late for Bob to react. Activating his dark magic, Toro threw it at the goblins surrounding Bob and shouted that they should regroup. Bob agreed, and they both ran to escape. A moment later, they were still running away. When Toro peeked back, he told Bob that he thought they were far enough. Bob asked if he was okay and if he had gotten hurt. Toro replied that he was fine, and Bob thanked him for saving his fur, to which Toro responded that it was okay. Bob awkwardly admitted that bad habits die hard and he doesn't know when to quit until it's too late. Toro reassured him that, in any case, he was glad they got out safely. Bob then suggested they report the situation to the guild, and Toro agreed. Later, they arrived at the guild, and Chloe was surprised to hear from them that there was not only a goblin sorcerer, but also a goblin knight at the shrine. Bob begged her to request reinforcement immediately, but she reminded him that when they did so previously, everyone except him ended up leaving. Bob asked about the guildmaster of that branch, suggesting he could be a valuable fighting force. Chloe replied that the guildmaster got tired of the villagers' attitude and quit 3 months ago, leaving her to run the guild by herself. Toro realized that the situation was worse than he had thought. If the people who left spread the village's bad reputation, no adventurer would be willing to come there. As Bob had said, they couldn't save the village unless they dealt with the source of the problem. He guessed they had no choice but to defeat the goblins with just the two of them. Chloe then assigned them both an urgent quest to eliminate the goblins, with no time limit. Toro stutteringly replied okay, and Chloe told them she'd leave it up to them. Toro told Bob that it was all up to the two of them to defeat the goblins. Bob expressed concern that defeating a group of goblins, including a sorcerer and a knight, with just 2 people was next to impossible. Toro laughingly replied that they didn't need to do it in one fell swoop or immediately, making Bob note that Toro had a mischievous look on his face. From that day on, Bob and Toro started a thorough cleanup of the goblins around the shrine. Toro knew that goblins moved in groups, so he decided to play it safe and pick them off one by one. He hit one of the goblins with his arrow, and slowly but surely, the 2-man team whittled down the number of goblins. Toro knew that they had wiped out all the normal goblins. The goblin sorcerer and the goblin knight would now have to forage for food themselves, which meant it was only a matter of time. Yet, he also knew that the enemy was stronger than them, and when push came to shove, Bob's strength would be crucial. A moment later, the goblin knight emerges from the shrine. Bob asks him if they should proceed, but he replies, not yet. The goblin knight then looks around and begins to move forward. Toro, seizing the moment, shoots an arrow and shouts, now Bob. Bob immediately rushes at the goblin knight. The arrow hits the goblin knight's head armor, causing it to look back in anger and block Bob's attack with its shield. Utilizing his spirit magic, Toro unleashes dark magic while taunting the knight. How about this? His attack causes the knight to burn from the inside. Bob takes the opportunity to slash the knight's face with his swords. Despite this, the knight manages to push Bob away with a single counter attack, and Toro uses the opportunity to stab the knight goblin in the shoulder. Suddenly, Toro detects the sorcerer and alerts Bob. The sorcerer is heading in their way. Bob is momentarily shocked, however the goblin knight slashes him, causing Toro to shout Bob's name in worry. Toro then attempts to stab the goblin knight in the chest, but the goblin knight blocks his attack and pushes his sword away, launching its own sword at Toro. Unfortunately, the sword pierces his stomach, and the knight laughs as Toro shakes in pain. Toro falls to the ground, and the goblin knight laughs loudly in victory. Yet, Toro manages to move and grabs his sword from the ground. He forces his shaking body to stand and channels all his power to boost his strength, stabbing the goblin knight in the neck, successfully killing it. Toro then kneels on the ground, feeling the pain of his wound, but he senses the goblin sorcerer behind him. He immediately uses his super regeneration skill. Smoke emerges from the sorcerer's mouth as it says, monster, and releases a huge fire from its mouth while Toro hides himself with his spirit magic dark magic. Toro pours a potion into Bob's mouth, urging him to hurry and heal up. The sorcerer spreads a rain of fire everywhere, forcing Toro to come out from hiding. The sorcerer tries to attack Toro with the huge fire, not noticing Bob moving. He dodges the fire in time and the sorcerer declares, this time, he won't miss. Suddenly Bob appears behind the sorcerer, ready to attack. Bob then slashed the goblin sorcerer's head and collapsed to the ground, exhausted. When he saw Toro, he gave him a thumbs up. Toro replied with an exhausted smile and sat down on the ground. He thanked Bob for saving him, but Bob reminded him that he saved him first and thanked him back. Toro then asked Bob if he could go ahead and report the quest completion, to which Bob stutteringly replied, sure. Bob then asked what Toro planned to do. Toro responded that he was curious about what was inside the shrine. Then he walked inside as Bob left. Inside the shrine, Toro released his light magic and looked around. He noticed that there didn't seem to be anyone inside, but dark spirits were gathering. He then saw something huge in front of him and wondered if it was a totem erected by the goblins. The sight and smell were gross, so he decided to cleanse and dispose of it. As he approached to touch it, a strong power pushed him away. Wondering if the totem was cursed, he was glad he hadn't touched it. The dark spirits swirled around him, seemingly communicating. He asked if they wanted him to cast purification on the stone as well. He agreed and purified the stone. After casting the purifying skill, letters appeared on the stone, releasing dark magic. A voice then informed him that he had confirmed the special skill condition of being the savior of 10 dark spirits, and had acquired the dark spirit magic, limit release, which left him confused as the words on the stone slowly faded away. As the words completely vanished, a dark shadow hand emerged from the stone. The dark spirit respectfully introduced itself as Pluto and thanked Toro for saving him. Pluto explained that a curse had been cast on the sacred stone where he resided, bringing harm to the village. As thanks for breaking the curse, Pluto granted Toro the blessing of the dark spirit. This blessing increased the effect and power of dark magic, as well as his resistance to it. Since Toro already possessed resistance to status afflictions, he would not be affected by the mind and ability impairments caused by dark magic. Pluto said it was the most he could do with his current strength. Toro thanked Pluto, acknowledging that it was really helpful. Pluto expressed gladness at being of assistance and said he would now depart, as it had been some time since he had seen the outside world. Pluto then speedily left the shrine, seemingly unaffected by the bright light outside. Toro felt the blessing of the dark spirit and was amazed at the newfound power. He thought that if the dark spirit was right, the curse on the village should now be broken. He exited the shrine and headed to where Bob was. Bob noticed him and called out cheerfully. Hugging Toro, Bob expressed his worry, saying he was about to go looking for him. Bob thanked him for helping them wipe out the goblins, but Toro replied that Bob had saved him in the end, so they were even. Bob then remarked that the fishy smell was gone and asked Toro if he had done something. Toro replied that he wasn't entirely sure, but it seemed that the curse cast on the village had been broken. Bob, shocked, asked if it was true. Toro explained that it seemed so, based on what the spirit had told him. Bob and Chloe exchanged puzzled looks, wondering what spirit he was talking about. Chloe then approached him and told him that the guild would properly reward him for completing the urgent quest, thanking him from the bottom of her heart. Toro told her to save her thanks for Bob, as if Bob hadn't noticed the problem and investigated it, he wouldn't have done anything. Bob, however, recounted how he thought he was finished when the Goblin Knight cut him down, and if Toro had been any less decisive, he would have been a goner. Bob then offered to reimburse Toro for the potion he used on him, but Toro told him not to worry about it, as it was a homemade potion, which shocked both Bob and Chloe. Chloe commented that Toro must have apothecary skills to be able to make his own potions, and noted his proficiency in archery, his ability to repair the guild house with his woodworking skills, and now his apothecary skill. Bob exclaimed that Toro was amazing, but Toro modestly replied that the only skill he had was the Garbled Text skill, which confused and saddened them both. Bob apologized and acknowledged that Toro must have had it rough, while Chloe also apologized for blindly praising him, recognizing that he must have worked very hard. Toro knew that in their world, the Garbled Text skill was also known as the unfortunate skill or the useless skill, and it went by several other unflattering names. It was natural for them to feel sympathy. They then entered the village and were greeted by happy people. Chloe remarked that the village seemed to have returned to normal, and Bob agreed, noting that the atmosphere was completely different from when he first arrived, indicating that they had indeed saved the place. Bob and Toro then bumped their fist in celebration. Toro looked at his hand and swore that he would continue to use his newfound power to answer calls for help from people all around the world, as it was the true meaning of his arrival in another world.